All right, test, test. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's June 1st Caldwell City Council workshop. Thank you all that are in attendance. I know it's a little bit earlier than many of us are used to, and thank you, council. We will have two councilors who are not able to make it today, but we have four present. The mayor is also present, and staff, and all of our wonderful guests out here, many community partners, so thank you. The purpose of this meeting is to hear a presentation by Mr. Roger Brooks that's here in the crowd on his new Envision Caldwell plan. Roger was hired in 2013 to create a branding, development, marketing, and action plan for downtown Caldwell that is still followed today. Many of you are familiar with the wonderful Indian Creek Plaza that we have. He has been working on a new plan called Envision Caldwell that we'll hear about this morning. And with that, we want to welcome Roger, and we appreciate your efforts to help this community and look forward to hear your new plan. And just FYI, there will be no public comment today. We're just hearing the plan, and you'll have some additional information for another meeting that's at Caldwell High School.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you very much for having me here. We kicked off this effort exactly 1 year ago this Thursday at Prime on the Plaza. And we will finish it up at Prime on the Plaza on Thursday. So if you don't get tickets, go ahead and get some. So I'm going to walk you through what we've been doing for the last year. It's going to be a little bit difficult because normally I have the screen in front of me and this time I don't. And so what I want to do is go through the who, what, why, where, when, and how, and then we'll dig into all the particulars of this whole effort that's going on this time. And so when it comes to the who, it was a team of enthusiasts, property owners, nonprofit organizations. You know, I'm going to go switch this from to mirroring just so I can see it a little better. Hang on just a sec. Sorry about that. Screen mirroring. This will help me see it a little bit better since I have. There we go. Uh-oh. Oh, no.
IT, can we get on that? Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, we'll just keep it with the same.
What's that? I guess I have to go to, now I'm just kicked off totally.
Okay.
Totally lost it now. Sorry. This is my third time presenting in council chambers, and both the other times it just worked. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Just so council's aware, we're going to take breaks at the top of the hour. Use the bathroom, get water, whatever you need.
There we go. Okay, we're going to try this again. Sorry, I really apologize about those issues. So I wanted to get into this about the who, and then we'll get into all the other elements of this. But it's been this team of people that we got together, and it includes, I need to be on the mic, downtown improvement district, businesses, property owners, and we just lost it again. Destination Caldwell was a part of this. Caldwell Chamber of Commerce is who we actually worked for. Our contract was with them. And then the City of Caldwell Economic Development. These are the main people that we worked with through this whole year-long process. And so that's kind of the who is behind this from day one. The people that you see coming up on your screen now are the people that were actually on the team. And one thing I wanted to make a note of right away is that some people said, yeah, but it's led by downtown property owners, And because we have 3 of the people on our team own property down there. And I just want to make sure the council understands that they never once in this whole year ever said, here's what I want to see on my property. And it was never about them. And so as a matter of fact, they're going to see some things on their property today that they haven't even seen. So this isn't like they controlled this effort. They were part of the team that sat there and were kind of our support team through this process. So that's the group we worked with. And the what and why we were doing this, the whole goals of this was to create a vision for this area of Caldwell, not the entire city, but a vision for this area. And during that process, we really called this Caldwell 4.0, Central Caldwell 4.0. Central Caldwell 1.0 would have been when I first came here in 2013, downtown, other than Indian Creek Steakhouse, was pretty much dead. I mean, it was like 80% vacant. There was nothing there. But then in the early 2000s, before that, Mayor Nancolis and a whole bunch of people, the city at that point moved the creek from across the street, across Blaine, where it was under the fire station and under there, moved it over to this side. And when he and the city moved the creek over to where it is now, I called that vision Central Caldwell 2.0. And then 3.0 was Indian Creek Plaza and the plan we did 10 years ago. And so that took the creek, it all of a sudden created an activity center with the Indian Creek Plaza, and we got the movie theater and all the other downtown revitalization. And so we've been referring to this as kind of called Central Caldwell 4.0. And so we wanted to create a vision for this area because the plan we did 10 years ago was pretty much completed, but it was a 3-year plan. And so here we are 10 years later finally saying, okay, here's your next 3 years, the next 3 years. Well, this time we stretched it out to create a vision for the next 25 years. So instead of coming back every 3 years, you'd have a long-term vision. So this was a much bigger project than that. And we wanted to create infill and redevelopment opportunities throughout this whole area, and then improve the quality of life for working, living, and spending times in this area. So we really concentrated on the people that live, work, and own properties within this boundaries. And I'll show you all of that. And then we wanted to shift the tax burden to more commercial development. You already have a pretty good balance between commercial and residential tax base, but we wanted to shift it even more so that more commercial is paying a heavier load than the residents of Caldwell. And that was important in this. And then we want to slow the leakage of locally earned money. When we first started this project, we went to the U.S. Census Bureau. We found 3 statistics that kind of guided us through this. And the first one was that Caldwell had slipped to dead last in the state of Idaho in terms of parks, trails, sports, and public amenities per capita. And the reason is you've grown, your population is more than doubled, yet those things didn't grow with your population. So we thought in this plan, could we help balance that? The result of this plan, if it was fully implemented, is it would put you from last to first. Just this plan in this area. The other thing that we found, and at first we thought it was 30%, but 70% of your workforce works in professional services. We thought it would be agriculture, other things, but 70% works in professional services, yet Caldwell has no Class A office buildings. So that means you have commute traffic every morning and every night as they go to Nampa and Meridian and Boise and Eagle and wherever else they're going to work, and then they're coming back because we don't have those shared office buildings. There are offices, don't get me wrong, but most of them are like single story or they're strip mall offices, and you didn't really have any real organized other than medical. And then the third statistic we found, I think that was it. Yeah, it was the parks. Oh, and that you have one of the highest rates of leakage of any city over 30,000 in Idaho, which means that you are spending more of your locally earned money in Nampa, Meridian, and other cities than in Caldwell. And you'll see that as we go through this. So those were kind of guiding us. And that's shifting that tax balance, slowing the leakage, increasing your parks, trails, recreational sports, reducing commute traffic. So that was one of those things. And then eliminate zoning by variance, which was something we heard from day one. And it's not a criticism. It's just that we said there's been a lot of zoning by, somebody says, I want to put a project here, and so we give them a variance. Don't know how true that is, but those are the things that we were given to start this whole process with. So those were kind of the goals of this effort. Next, and so the big thing is improve the quality of life for Caldwell residents. That was very much a priority. Having a great downtown with ample parking, we'll get into that. And then adding parks, trails, sports, and recreational facilities was important. And then improving neglected neighborhoods was important, and you'll see that coming up. And then increase community pride. So that's really the foundation we used for what we wanted to accomplish this. When it came to the where, when we first were approached, and sorry, I keep looking back there, it's bigger than my screen over there, is when he started this process, our agreement was with the chamber and the working committee that we would work in this 900-acre area, which is basically Centennial Avenue to 21st, and we weren't going to go beyond 21st. So that was our core area. But the more we dug into it, the more we felt that there needed to be integration between the fairgrounds, the rodeo, the College of Idaho, all of these facilities as part of this. So we voluntarily came back, and so you're seeing right now what our boundaries are. We went to Blaine Street to I-84, Centennial, all the way down to 21st Avenue. And so we decided to go, and we did it. We expanded it, and by the way, we never went back and said we need more money or anything. We just voluntarily thought, if we could go back, we really felt that it was important to go from Linden all the way to even the Rotary Pond up at the north end to really combine this whole area, because we need to connect them better. If people are going to the rodeo, can we connect them better to downtown? The college students don't drive. Can we connect them better to downtown? And can we connect downtown down to the fairgrounds and the rodeo and all of those things? So we expanded that quite a bit. And you can see on this map that it goes way up on the Boise River, because during our public outreach, we were told that there was this idea to do a whitewater park, and we went, whoa, cool, how's that? So we added that too. And so it became quite a big area of Central Caldwell that we worked in. And so you can see where the Rotary Pond is coming up on your screen and where Linden Avenue is. So that ended up being our where, quite a bit. And so that's our planning area. You can see on this map, you can see where the rail line is. You can see where the creek is. It's in the blue dots that you see there. That's Indian Creek, and how it follows all the way. And one of our very first things was in the comprehensive plan about connecting the creek and making the creek more accessible all the way through Caldwell. So when is the next thing? And with this, we started in June of last year. We originally thought we could be done with this by the end of the year. Well, a lot of things happened. We way expanded the area. We really increased the public outreach. We did a whole bunch of extra work on it. And so it ended up pretty much taking the whole year. And so that branding, development, and marketing action plan, like I said earlier, was done basically 10 years ago. Indian Creek Plaza was built in 2018. The plan was done in 2015. So we came back almost exactly 10 years after the original plan that included Indian Creek Plaza. And then this, the blueprint, is basically this year, but it's going to extend out over quite a bit of time. So how we did this process is that our entire foundation was the 2025 comprehensive plan. We went on day one after we first met, we went through the comprehensive plan, and we actually pulled out a comprehensive plan, every recommendation in there that would fit this area of Caldwell. Obviously, there are other residential neighborhoods down by the lake and other areas that didn't really fit central Caldwell. So we went through the comprehensive plan and pulled it out and used it as our guide so that we did nothing. There are only 2 projects in this plan that are not addressed in the comprehensive plan. One of those was the quiet zone. The other one, and it didn't address it either way. It just wasn't even in there that I could find. The other one was we have a conference center in here that wasn't in there. Tourism was definitely in the comprehensive plan, but a physical conference center was not in there. Everything else that you'll see today is in the comprehensive plan. And so then we did interviews and public outreach. We did 65 meetings over 8 months. I'll show you all that. We did a partnership with ArchNexus. It's Architectural Nexus. They're based out of the Salt Lake area. They did a feasibility study with urban renewal for basically the Old Town area of Caldwell. And that is also in our area. When we first started this, we had no idea who ArchNexus was. We didn't know that anybody had been hired. But then we learned early on that they were also working in the same area we were. So we teamed up with them. Robert here that helped me do this whole project actually spent time in their offices. So we really partnered together with them, and they also did a lot of public outreach. We also, with this, is on every single recommendation we put in there, we created this scale and said, if Caldwell does this, will it improve the quality of life for the citizens, particularly in this area, on a scale of 1 to 5, or would it be minus? Would this be a negative impact? And of course, we didn't put anything that have a negative impact. And almost everything we put in here was like a +5. But that was, we had to weigh every project, see, would this improve the quality of life? And then demand and feasibility for every single commercial project you're gonna see in here. We figured out what is feasible, like how many hotel rooms are feasible in Caldwell? How many multifamily housing is feasible in Caldwell? What is feasible? There is no private sector project in this plan that is not already feasible. So we didn't want to just throw things out there and say, you know, sometimes somebody's going to figure it out. We figured out what is feasible and where would it go. And so that was important. And then our last one was highest and best use. We looked at each piece of property that is privately owned or even publicly owned and said, what is the highest and best use of this property? And we used standard national economic development standards and real estate development standards for that. And so you're gonna see some places, and I'll explain how we ended up with these in those locations, highest and best use. Like obviously, if you're on the water, highest and best use would be hotels, residential, restaurants, and retail. I mean, they take advantage, people pay more for a view. So those are those kinds of things that we included in there. And so that kind of gives you an idea. On the comprehensive plan, there was 12 public events, 6 online activities, 8 committee meetings. This is out of the comprehensive plan. And 525 total event participants and 526 online participants and 59 listening session participants. And so, you know, and there it is. They had a website during your comprehensive planning effort. Sorry, I keep stepping away from the microphone. And so we did that. And then ArchNexus, and so that was a year-long process. So already a tremendous amount of public outreach had been done for the comprehensive plan. And we're following the comprehensive plan. And so ArchNexus also did 20 stakeholder meetings in the same area we're working in, and they did that April through October. They finished their project in October. We had ours pretty much done by the beginning of January, and after the beginning of January, we had spent 8 months doing this, and then it was just putting it all together over the last few months. And they met with the city finance department, urban renewal, community outreach at Lions Park, community outreach at a farm to fork market. They did community outreach at the Caldwell Library twice. And that's all included the Caldwell Housing Authority, planning and zoning. I'm sorry, I'm looking back there, Public Works. They met with Destination Caldwell, the College of Idaho, the city department leaders. And that was the work that they did, which is all part of our work. It was all part of the same area. We expanded our area to be bigger than theirs, so that was all part of the public reach. When it came to ours, our agreement with the Chamber of Commerce and with our team that we worked with was we would hold stakeholder meetings over 3 days and have as many as 15 meetings. That was our agreement. Because we were using the comprehensive plan. So we just thought we'd come here and meet with departments and everything. And so that was in our agreement to do that. But then we decided, you know what, let's meet with more. And so now you're going to see a list, and I won't read them all, but you're going to see the in parentheses, the number of meetings. So this is the public outreach we did once we were here. So instead of 3 days, we spent 8 months doing public outreach. Before we started writing the plan, most of that was done in 2025. So these are all the meetings that we did during this process. And we did focus on Central Caldwell. But we were asked to provide how many meetings and where did you do these meetings and all of that. So those are the meetings that we did. So we ended up holding 65 meetings. And then we did over 5 months, or over 8 months, excuse me, June through January. And we got 234 texts. And so just so you understand, during this process, I handed out almost 400 business cards. At public meetings, I would give everybody my email address. And I responded to every single email. And I even got a lot of texts were involved with that. And so we did that. We had 4 calls with the press, visits, interviews, and then there's 20 casual meetings. So for instance, we were walking Indian Creek at 21st, trying to figure out how do we get a promenade to go under 21st there, rather than over 21st. And while we were there, I think it's Dave that owns Woody's, happened to be out walking his dog. So we spent half an hour with him. And I didn't include that in the meetings because it was just casual. We ran into him. We talked about the promenade, where it could go, and would it be on his side of the creek? Would it be on the fair side of the creek? You know, where the parking lot is there. And so that we also had 20 casual meetings like that. And then over those 150, hundreds of business cards, I went through a whole box of them. And so that was our public outreach for this. And then what we heard, and I'll go through these and I'll try to go through them one. The number one thing we heard was fix the downtown parking nightmare. People said, and I'm not talking about the whole paid parking thing. I'm just talking about make it easier for people to park downtown. That was the number one complaint that we heard from people. Fix the Golden Gate Irrigation District. We heard that from the Old Town folks, what we now call the Garden District. But that was something that was very difficult for us because Golden Gate has nothing to do with the city. It's its own independent entity, but that is something that we heard. And we did come up with some ideas of how to address that. Help us in our Old Town neighborhood, please. And they were just asking for basic services that the rest of the city gets. And for me, personally, I've just felt that the city has ignored that neighborhood for decades, and it's obvious, because we didn't find that in any other neighborhoods. And so that's what we heard. Enforce abatement and other city ordinances in the Old Town area. I'll get into that. Make it easier to get from point A to point B. Transit, shuttles, trails. What you see in light blue up there are things that we heard in spades. That where people came out. And that's one of the reasons why we added that whole extra area, because it wasn't well connected. Even Memorial Park to downtown, the Rotary Pond to downtown, the fairgrounds to downtown, very much kind of disconnected. Make it easier to host events at the fairgrounds area. Can't we all get along? And we heard this from day one. It's the city and county like this, As a matter of fact, you have the only fairgrounds we could find in the United States that's owned by 2 different municipalities. It just doesn't make for somebody wanting to host an event here that I have to go work with the city for their property and then go work for the county for their property. And if the 2 don't get along, I'm just telling you what we heard. And then improve to the fairgrounds, improvements there. And it was parking, it was all kinds of things. And I'll get into this. as we go through. Get into the tourism economy, diversify your economy from agriculture. And I'll get into all of these, but these are just to let you know, we need additional big box retail. It was funny because the one thing we heard over and over was, get us a Trader Joe's. And somebody said there was one in Nampa that didn't make it, and I went, wow, we heard that. But there were a lot of people who said, could you get us some big box on this side of 84? So we don't always have to go on 20 and 26 over there. We can actually stay because most of your residents live on this side. So we did hear that about getting some of that over on this side of the freeway. Open up Indian Creek, create a paved trail system was in there. Develop a whitewater park on the Boise River, develop more sports facilities for falling short. So I'm not telling you what we said, this is what we heard. And then make Central Caldwell more bike and pedestrian friendly. Some of these are nothing new. We need more dining options downtown. Create more attractive gateways into Central Caldwell, like on 21st and 10th Avenues. Adopt or do not adopt the rail quiet zone, and that one turned out to be a nightmare for probably everybody. But we heard both ways on that one. Please, no more zoning by variance, recruit lodging downtown, expand on Indian Creek Plaza with additional public gathering areas, develop active senior housing, need changing a variety, even on Indian Creek Plaza, it needs to change more often. So those were probably some of the comments. And remember, we received hundreds. And so all of these we took into our consideration during this process. And so we made, in the plan that you have, and sorry that plan is huge, but it's mainly pictures. In there are 35 recommendations, but there's like 1,000 things to do. So one of the recommendations was to create a website, and I want to let you know the team did this. We didn't do it. Our Caldwell team did this website. It is up, it is live, it's envisioncaldwell.com. It's got a lot of elements of the plan that you have in front of you on it. And it talks about this journey a lot. It's really well done. And so that is already live. I already did that. And so it's already up there, and it'll change over time. And this is, you're seeing just a screenshot of it. It's the whole legacy of transformation for this area of Caldwell. So remember, this is just Central Caldwell. We're not trying to fix all of Caldwell during this process. But it talks about imagine what's possible. And one thing that's really important, that what you're about to see is a vision. It's not black and white. And this plan that you have in front of you does not require the city to spend one single cent. It's like the comprehensive plan. It's not saying we have to implement it all. You can pick and choose which project, when, and how they're funded, and all of those issues. So this is really an extension of the comprehensive plan. So when it came to the who, what, when, why, and how, do you have any questions of me? Because now dig into the actual plan. But do you have any questions about the process we went through? No? Okay, we're good to go. Just taking a swig of my Everclear. I wish. Okay, so the vision and blueprint, here's the initial recommendations where we would like to see the city, one of our recommendations for the city to adopt this plan. It does not commit the city, like I said, to spending one single dime or even doing a single project. This really is an extension of your comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plans around the country are called general plans. They're very general in nature. Well, this takes the very general in nature and adds teeth to it and actual projects. And with a real focus on commercial. And so one of the things we want the city to do is actually adopt this as a companion to the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan actually says that in the plan itself, in the comprehensive plan, it says that as you get other plans that fit into this, adopt them into it. And that's already in there. Another recommendation was to contractor hire a professional full-time to implement this plan. So there was some talk that, oh, Roger's just trying to build in work for himself. Not so. But I will tell you that in 2013 to 2018, Mayor Nancolis hired a person full-time when we did that original plan, said make it happen. And of course, it wasn't just mayor, it was the whole city and a tremendous group of volunteers. But that effort is how you ended up with Indian Creek Plaza and everything. It was somebody just taking the bull by the horns. And like I said, with this plan that's in front of you, it's 1,000 activities. And having worked in 2,800 communities in 45 states, every province across Canada, and all over Western Europe and Scandinavia, we didn't want to create a plan that's going to sit on a shelf gathering dust. So we really wanted to create a plan that somebody would sit there, and if you say, okay, Rob and Dan, everybody, just add this list, add this to your already busy list. We've seen plans like this that end up, you spend 150 grand or more on them, and they end up on a shelf because there isn't somebody dedicated to implementing it. And remember, this includes hundreds of millions of dollars of private sector development. One statistic that just shocked the heck out of me is that 83% of the city's budget is on fees. Only 17% is on property taxes. So anybody that's trying to slow the growth, the city is so addicted to fees that I don't know how you would ever slow the growth without drastically dropping your city budget. So for us to say, well, why don't we work on some projects here that would give you more property tax so that you're not required to have such a huge level of fees? You know, so if growth slows, all of a sudden, what happens to your city budget? And I think you're already facing like $1.5 million shortfall because fees are down, and they're down across the country. And so with this, hiring somebody full-time will help you recruit the businesses, hold their hands. So for instance, there's the Indian Creek Promenade, which I'll show you. It will extend across 3 miles. It's 3 miles, a little over 3 miles from Linden to the Rotary Pond. Well, somebody's going to have to go talk to about 80 property owners. Can we run this? Can we get easements? There's about 6 private properties where this might go through. We might not get easement. We may have to route it away from the creek and then back to the creek. I mean, there's just so many things going on here that's why we made that recommendation, okay? And then create a community profile. In my career, we used 2 pieces, a community profile and an opportunities brochure. This is kind of an opportunities brochure that you got that our team already put together, the Caldwell team. So when I say the team, I'm talking about the people in Caldwell, not our company, that we put together. But in my career, I've recruited $2.6 billion worth of private sector development into communities. And I'm not doing that as a sales pitch. I'm doing that because I did it with a community profile and I did it with an opportunities brochure. I never, ever did an RFP for development projects, ever. As a matter of fact, I don't really think that's the way to go. I think what you do is you find the developer you want and you go recruit them. And that is the process that I used in my whole career, recruiting billions of dollars worth of into destination resorts and cities. And so these 2 are the 2 pieces I use most. So they're in the plan. They're not really expensive. And by the way, real estate agents love using these for new residents, for new businesses coming in, because it gives you all the things about weather and local churches, events, your utilities, and it just gives you a snapshot of the whole city of Caldwell. So that's in there. The other thing we put in there, and I'll get through these in just a sec, is becoming a member of Urban Land Institute, and you may already be that, and I'm not too sure if you belong. Urban Land Institute, I found to be very, it's a national nonprofit, and it's made up of developers. I would go to Urban Land Institute, they do 2 or 3 conferences a year where they have trade shows, And out of the billions of dollars I recruited, I basically went to Urban Land Institute and I sold people. I sold developers nationally to come into the cities I was working in. They were the best organization I could get to recruit new tax base into communities. So that's a recommendation. So when we get into this, now we're getting into the planning. By the way, any questions on that? Those initial things? Okay, we're good? And feel free to stop me anytime.
Councilor Denver.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Brooks, I appreciate your presentation up to this point, but a couple different things that you talked about with your recommendations, I'm just trying to follow along here.
Oh, they don't follow along at all. I'm sorry. Yeah, I wouldn't even look at that right now.
We have this really big thing.
I know. We call it a coffee table book. Yeah, and don't use that because the recommendations, here I'm doing more geographically. So sorry about that if you're trying to follow along. That's why I didn't number them on here. All the recommendations that are in that plan are in here, but they're not in that order. So, yeah, thank you, council member. Yeah, I forgot. I should have told you that up front so you're going, now where the heck are we? One of the very first things we did is we decided to create some districts. And in this process, the first one we created is this area, which was referred to as Old Town. And what was interesting is when we met to the people in Old Town, they said, could you call us something other than Old Town? So we worked with them, and I came with the idea of a garden district. And the reason the garden district idea came up with, there's some of the homeowners in this district, even without irrigation, they're using regular potable water. They have beautiful gardens. The veterans gardens there. We wanted to create some community gardens. We wanted to make Chicago and Fifth Avenue and Chicago Street beautiful. And so we thought, why don't we call this a garden district? And it'll give people incentive. You have Lions Park out there. And so that is the garden district. Then what we did is we created the next district, which would be the Plaza District. And that one's kind of obvious. It revolves around Indian Creek Plaza. So you can see kind of how we outlined it here on there. And then we created a third district, which we are calling the Stockyard, district. And we originally were going to call it the Cattlemen's District, but we met with Economic Development. They said, why don't we do something? So we called it the Stockyard District, which they came up with, and I thought was a brilliant idea. So now we have these three districts, and the Stockyard District is totally different. I mean, it's really the heart of your agriculture community, the rodeo, the fair, all of that whole area. So we have the Stockyard District, we have the Plaza District, and people might say, well, why didn't you do a little district in that in between? We didn't want to start, we already have the Steunenberg District, so we didn't want to create so many districts that people were confused. But the Garden District is really a standalone. It's the smaller homes. It's largely Hispanic. It's a whole separate, and it's largely residential. The Plaza District is your commercial shopping core. And then the Stockyard District is really your ag center, really kind of the bigger commercial development. So that's where we came up with these three districts for this process. And in this case, in the Garden District, there it is. We even did a logo for you and for them. We thought it would be that area, and you can see there in this, you can see there are some, a sports park. I'll get into all of these a little bit later, but that would be that area there. I just kind of blew it up. So it goes down to 10th, basically between Centennial and 10th, and from the freeway, basically everything is down to Blaine in our case. In their case, it goes down to about the railroad tracks. You can see there's that little triangle there. It says active senior housing. That could have been in the Plaza District or the Garden District. It didn't really matter. So that's something you could say, well, let's include that in the Plaza District. We'll have a straight line going across there, or we could include them in the Garden District. I think the Garden District for active senior living would probably be have more sex appeal. And so that's the Garden District. The Plaza District right there, you can see, it basically extends beyond 10th and goes down to 12th. We didn't think that 10th needed to be the Great Wall of China. You know, we thought, you know, there's plenty of ways to get under 10th. There's 3 different ways to get under 10th on both sides of the creek and back behind the theater and then coming down. And so in this case, we extend the Plaza District over to 12th. And it goes basically from the railroad tracks down to Cleveland Boulevard, that area. And then the Stockyard District basically goes but it starts at about 17th or so, and then goes all the way down to Linden. So there's our 3 districts right there that we wanted to do. So, and we would like the city, so this is the second thing we would like you to adopt, is the districts. And the reason we want you to adopt district names is because once the city adopts a name, ITT out there, your Department of Transportation can put on there Stockyard District next exit. They can only do that if the city adopted the district. Or they can say Plaza District next right. And it also lets Public Works, it lets Destination Caldwell, Chamber, anybody, they can go in and start creating pole banners and everything because they've been officially adopted. So we can have pole banners, and you'll see some things going through there. You'll see, I did some sample pole banners in there. But by adopting these names, it allows you to do signage, allows you to do decorations, and it creates an official district for each of these areas. Doesn't cost any money. You're not promising anything. You're just saying, well, yeah, we're going to adopt these districts. And that way we can work on wayfinding and other signage in and to these districts, because they're each significantly different from each other. So there's the districts. Any questions on that one? You're okay with that? Good? Okay, thank you, Mayor. And so now we'll talk about gateways. There were 2 areas where we really want to see gateways, and particularly on 10th and 21st. Those are your 2 major gateways, the 21st coming in the Stockyard District and 10th coming in to the Plaza District. And of course you can turn off at 10th and go down Chicago Avenue into the Garden District. And so we want to develop gateways along those. This is where 10th, and right now 10th, I think it's closed right now, isn't it? It was yesterday when we got here. But we thought this area right across, and this, by the way, is if you're heading west and take 10th Avenue, this is what you see. So where you see over there on this picture, we thought, could we do something like that? Maybe there'd be a water feature there. And this, by the way, doesn't have to be. It usually comes down to budget. Water is always more expensive. But we wanted to create a really great entry into Caldwell. And we would love to see it with like trellises, with some grape ivies. When we did the plan for the city 12, 13 years ago, we said Caldwell's brand is Idaho's wine country. I mean, it attracts the highest end visitors, it attracts higher end residents. Play off the Sunny Slope Wine Trail. 40% of Idaho's wineries are in Caldwell. So why not? So we thought if we could do trellises or anything to give you kind of a great gateway there. And then once you turn on 10th and start heading down 10th, you can see here, you can see Pizza Hut on one area and Jack in the Box. And both those corners right now have some trees, but it would be nice if there was something that says, welcome to Caldwell, welcome to the Plaza District right there. So those would be corners that you already own, that are already have some landscaping, but could just go to the next level. And it's about creating that. And here we showed coming off the highway without water. So you said, we really can't afford the water, so we'll do this right now and create some gateways like that. It says, welcome to the city of Caldwell. I would always add wayfinding there. It says Central Caldwell or Plaza District left, so people know where to go and how to get to your Central Caldwell. So these are all ideas. This is 21st. So remember, these are just a vision. These are concepts. It doesn't mean it has to look exactly like that. But I want to give you some ideas. When you come off at 21st, it's a little bit different. And you can see in these cases, like they're saying, well, you have Stockyard District implanted right into the asphalt. They call that street print or Duratherm process. And it's actually embossed down into, you can have whatever design you want. You could have the City of Caldwell logo in the middle of your street. And what it is, it's embossed down in the asphalt about 1/2 inch, and then it has about 1/4 inch of this special polymer that's down in there. So you can do chains and snow removal right over it because it's sunk down in. It lasts like 30 years. So it's actually embossed down in there, whatever design you want. And so we thought, man, you could do some really cool intersection treatments, and it's like $6 a square foot to do, versus doing paver stones and ripping up streets. But once they Duratherm this into the intersection, they could do one lane at a time, and you could drive on it within minutes after they do it. So they create basically these stamps, and they heat stamp it down into the asphalt, and then they fill in the polymers, and then they move over and do the next lane. So just kind of a cool you can see we did a lot of landscaping there at a commercial road, Franklin Road and 21st, where the drainage ponds are and everything there, just to create a nice entrance into that area, into the Stockyard District. These are just concepts again. It might look like this. We just said, well, Caldwell Stockyard District, and as you go down 21st there. So there's a just concept. And remember, these are concepts, it's a vision. And some ideas. As you come down 21st, all the way, one of the things we put in there was putting street trees all the way down 21st on both sides of the street. And usually when you do street trees, you usually do them every 40 to 50 feet. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do street trees all the way down 21st so it looked like that? I mean, talk about a great first impression when you come into the Stockyard District right there. And you can see there, we even have wayfinding there, larger wayfinding, College of Idaho, Fairgrounds, D&B Arena, it's Simplot Stadium. No, I did get those backwards. No, I got it right. And so doing that down there really creates this. So those are our gateways. Those are the two primary gateways that we that we included in the plan. Part of the gateways is the wayfinding system, and one of our recommendations was to install the wayfinding system. We want to thank Public Works for storing it, and so Danae just sent me a text yesterday and said, by the way, Roger, this wayfinding is pretty much installed. You've been installing it over the last couple of weeks. And so that's great. So it's a recommendation you've already been working on. You already had the signs in place. However, one thing I will say about the wayfinding, and these are the ones, I took these at Public Works last year. And so I wanted to thank Public Works for being able to store these until we could get everything. I think Urban Renewal helped fund installation of these, and that's been on their list for quite a while. And so most of the wayfinding is up. However, we do believe that over time you need to expand your wayfinding system because your wayfinding system is in the core area. We'd really like to see the wayfinding be down to Memorial Park. We'd like to see it off of Centennial Way. We'd like to see more wayfinding on Blaine and Cleveland, which for the most part are state highways, so it's a whole different ball game. But we did want to have that done. And so you've got a great start there. One of the things that's really important when it comes to things like parking, we found 4 small parking lots downtown that there's no signage to them. And so that's where wayfinding. So when people a lot of times complain about parking, a lot of times because they don't know where it is. So if there's nothing on the street, they say there's no parking. So those are some things you could add. So any questions on that? Gateways or entries or wayfinding? Still good? Okay, thanks, Mayor. So, Indian Creek Promenade, now we're getting into the fun stuff. This, from day one, was like our pet project. Well, one of our 2 pet projects. What you're going to see is a lot of quotes like this that are right out of the comprehensive plan. Those are quotes out of the comprehensive plan. It says, residents seek an extensive trail network connecting parks, the Boise River, surrounding farmland, and key destination. Now, our project doesn't go out into existing farmlands, but we took that quote to heart, and that's where we created the Indian Creek Promenade, right out of the comprehensive plan. It's exactly what it says. And so what you can see here in that blue dotted line is the Indian Creek Promenade. We extended it down to Linden in our case, but you know, there's the whole goal is to create a trail system all the way from Boise out to into the Treasure Valley. That's the ultimate goal on a region-wise. But we thought if we could start at Linden, and down close to Linden, there's already kind of a trail. It's a dirt trail along through the residential areas there that already kind of follow the creek. So this would just be paving that part. But you can see how it goes all the way up north. It would actually go up to Chicago, follow Chicago up over the river to the Rotary Pond. But then you can see we also have a trail that goes up to where we put that Whitewater Challenge course there. So remember, it said connected to the Boise River. And then there is another trail we created that can be the Treasure Valley Trail. So at one point around Centennial is where the trail would branch off and go other directions over time. But our core thing was creating that Indian Creek Promenade from Linden, basically the fairgrounds, to the Rotary Pond. And that is just incredible. This rendering concept right here, you know where the cell tower is near 21st, just probably about 19th, back in there? That's where this is, and there is the train track there, and we actually walked under the train track. There was enough room to put a promenade under the train track in that location. There are other locations where we have to somehow figure out, well, how do we deal with the rail? And those are the expensive ones. But this just gives you an idea. You can see the pink or magenta line there is the rail, and then you can see where the promenade follows the rail line almost exactly the whole way. And so that was important in this. And so you can see there where it is. So that is one of the major projects. We would never say, city, go out and develop Indian Creek Promenade and let's get it done in 2 years. This might be a 10-year project because you have to have right-of-ways, you have to get funding. And so, for instance, removing the lids on both sides of Kimball is in this plan and it's already being done. So you can do these in pieces. We'd like to take the lid off the one at the police station where there's like 3 shrubs growing over the creek on a concrete slab. So it's opening up the creek. And so you can start in your core area and then start expanding it over time. And so this is what we see, you know. We want it to be like 12 feet wide. It would be all handicap accessible, ADA. There would be public restrooms on it. There would be trash receptacles. There would be cameras on it. It would be lit at night. And so it's not a cheap undertaking. And this is where I don't want to spend a bunch of time and get into anything controversial, but what you see there in that orange is what they call the sound corridor for rail. And that is 1,000 feet each side of the rail. The only reason we supported the quiet zone was because it consumes 40% of the entire area we are working in. And we didn't want people walking down and so we did, install the quiet zone safety enhancements that the council approved. But what we didn't want is for people to walk down the trail with a stroller and all of a sudden, wonk, and all of a sudden freak somebody out as the rail is, because the promenade is so close to the rail and most of it that we just didn't want it to create a major issue. However, I will tell you that if I was a kid going down that trail and I saw a train, I'd be going, yeah, blow the horn, and so I get it. But that is one of the reasons why we supported it, was because it consumes so much of that. And the people in the district that said, yeah, we're used to it, we said, would it improve the quality of life if you were in a quiet zone over the way it is now? And every single person said, well, yeah, it would improve our quality of life. And so those are why we did that. So, and I personally paid a very, very, very dear price for that. However, we do believe there could be a second phase, and we do believe, and I really firmly believe that there should be additions here. I was working down in Utah. This is Taylorsville, Utah. They have a quiet zone, goes through West Jordan, goes through that whole area in the Salt Lake Valley, very heavily, densely populated. And they said this was so inexpensive. They said what's cool about this is people walk up to this little tiny gate and they turn right. So they walk up to it, and it's this way. They go like this, and they're looking up the railroad tracks. They go around it, and then they have to go, and now they're looking down. So before they cross, they're being forced to look up and down the tracks. And in this case, they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets of tracks. So you have to see a train from a long ways away. you know, because that's a lot of travel across the tracks. But those, and they said they have never had an incident just since they did that. So this is for pedestrians. And I think this is very important at 21st and Kimball. The reason being, at both 21st and Kimball, you have public parking on one side of the tracks and your major attraction is on the other side. Now, rail engineers will say, if we see a lot of pedestrian traffic, we're gonna pull the horn. And I believe they should, and that's at their discretion. They absolutely should. But I just thought this would be a fairly inexpensive way to help the pedestrians, basically forcing them to look up and down the track before they cross. So that's still in there. And we think that's important. The other thing on the promenade, you can see where those yellow circles are. We love these like faux bridge arches. Let me show you right here. Create overpass elements. If we go back here, you can see on those intersections, we use, it looks like they're paver. It's actually Durtham. They're stamped into the asphalt, so every time you go over a creek, it looks like it's a paver surface. Well, it's not. It's just actually stamped in there. So you're not changing it. You're just stamping it in there with the Durtham process. And then we thought, wouldn't it be cool if you use these? This is at 11th or 12th. And I love these. It's not really a structural thing. It's more of and we'd love to see those at both Kimball and at every one of those where the creek goes under the road. So the creek is the dominant feature, not the street. We really want, you have one of the most stunning downtowns in the United States, and I've worked in 45 states. And I thought, man, we got to make that creek more center to this and really make it the focus. So we love those elements. So and those can be added later. So you can say, well, you know, let's get a grant or let's get funding. Let's create 2 more of those. We'd love to see them right at Kimball right now where you have that going across. It's just a really nice element that says you're crossing a street. Crossing the stream, excuse me. And so there's the Durtham process. As you can see there, it looks like there's a ring of paver stones around there. It's not. It's all stamped in there. And it's colored with that polymer. And you can do, you know, like I said, snow removal, everything right over it without any issue. We thought that'd be really cool. So if we walked the prom, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but if we walk the prom, and this is back to the concrete pans, it says encourage infill development, restoration, redevelopment of vacant, underutilized, and neglected properties. One thing that's really important is this promenade follows a lot. See where those red stars are? It's undeveloped or underdeveloped properties. And there's a bunch of them down at the other end, down in the Stockyard District area. And so by having the promenade going along the creek, all of a sudden it creates incentive for people to develop that. And you'll see some examples, some concepts we put in there. And we really felt that the creek would be one of those things that would help this happen. Where that yellow circle is, you can see there's a Caldwell Sports Park. I'll get into that. It would go underneath Centennial and connect to the trail that goes up to the Boise River. So we try to create a way for this promenade to not go over too many streets. So that would be totally off the streets in that regard. So you can see from Simplot Boulevard along Centennial Way, it starts to come down. And all those red stars are properties that there are developments on them. And in some cases, there might be a home in there. And by the way, we're not telling the city to take anyone's home or anyone's business. But maybe the property owner will give you an easement. And if they don't give you easement, can we put it on the other side of the creek? I mean, this is all the process you work through. So we want to make sure it's really clear to everybody that this plan does not take anybody's property from anybody. It's just, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a promenade running through my backyard or through my property. It's commercial property. Maybe that'll spur development on my property. And so you can see that. So now we're heading down from Simplot Boulevard along Centennial Way, and it goes under Centennial Way in this case. And then if we keep let's see, we keep going down there. And I'm going to show you, you'll see, like it says, 55 plus multifamily. I'll get into that. Up there at the very top, you see a red circle just showed up. And we actually have the Treasure Valley Trail going up there. And we even designed, wouldn't it be cool in one of those little ponds to do something like this? Just another little, you know, you've got Rotary Pond as a trail going around. We thought, man, that little area up there is really cool. All those little ponds and areas. Some of it's kind of used for fire training and I don't know what all. It's kind of junky right now, but it could be really cool additional parkland or public use land for kayaks and non-motorized boats there. So that was one idea that we had for there. What you see in yellow here are what we consider underdeveloped. Now you will see that the recycling plants are in that yellow. We're not saying that they're going to go anywhere. As a matter of fact, one of our first projects is where could we put the recycling plants? And it wasn't feasible for the city or them. They actually have a rail spur in there. So we figured out other ways to mitigate them in the garden zone so you don't see it so obviously, and I will show you that. But these are all areas where the promenade would be close enough that it gives you great options for redevelopment. And so if we keep moving down, now we're going from Simplot Boulevard down to 10th. This goes right through the heart of downtown, right through where we're at basically. And I won't go into a whole lot of detail because I'll include that in the Plaza District. But you can see the picture down there. I'll show you that in a second. That's at the police station. Here's the police station here, and that lid you see right there is in this list to be removed. It's a big concrete slab with 1, 2, 3 bushes on it. Why? Why don't you take that off of there and open up the creek? We would love to see in this concept, we would love to see, and you can see right there where the police station is, on the right side of the creek there. You see, we kind of ran it along that section of Arthur Street, so it might look something like that. So these, once again, these are just concepts and ideas, but this is all about opening up Indian Creek and making it an attraction rather than something that's overgrown and something that we're trying to bury. I mean, it's the number one attraction in the world is water, whether it's creeks, rivers, lakes, or oceans. And so we thought, man, could we do something like that? And this promenade, by the way, is 12 feet wide, so you can accommodate bikes. You can even actually do a bike lane. It'll accommodate a couple walking side by side or walking their dog or somebody with a stroller. So the width of it was very important through this whole process. If we keep going down from 10th down to 21st, this is where it goes through. This is the only place where it does touch on some residential properties. If you know Rattlesnake Court, that area, on the other side of 10th, right there, there are some individual properties in there, and those are ones we have to figure out, how do we work around? There are many bridges where he said, well, right here we got 3 or 4 houses. Why don't we run it across the creek over there where it's commercial, and then down, and then we could run it back over here. And remember, these are all concepts. It may be that these property owners say, you know what, I don't want the promenade on my property. I'm not going to give you easement. So in that case, it could be that down the road you actually have it away from the creek for 2 or 3 blocks. The entire 3-mile length from the Fair Event Center, so not counting the houses that are along Chicago between the Fair Event Center and Linden, 7 houses. That whole 3 miles. All the rest of it is pretty much commercial or big lots. They're most of them are privately owned. So we're not talking a whole lot of residences that we have to work through, but this is all part of the process. So if I keep going with this, you can see that's where we took that one picture. Was if I go back, you can see right there, there's where that cell tower is. And what's kind of sad right now about Indian Creek, people have just dumped piles of concrete right there. There's just piles of broken up concrete dumped there on the banks. Well, you know that has lye in it, that kills fish. You know, these are about cleaning up the creek. We went down with Will Anderson, who donated a lot of his time, and we actually walked as much Indian Creek as we could, drove it. And when you go down to Walmart and Nampa and everything, you can see trout in the creek. It's clear. And so those are those kinds of things that, wow, why can't we do this in Caldwell? And so that was really important to this whole process. And so I'll go past that. And then it says encourage infill development, restoration, that once again, that's in the comprehensive plan. And as the creek goes down, now you can see properties. Now we're getting down towards 21st. So it's very much commercially zoned. But if you had the creek, if you had the promenade across there, you could do some incredible big box development or things working with property owners where the promenade could be, like in this case, we actually put a Trader Joe's there. And does that mean there's going to be a Trader Joe's? Does that mean that's where we go? No, but it's a concept where somebody could, if the property owner wanted, put a bigger box retailer there and actually have park access between it and the creek with some public parking. We have lots of parking along the promenade all throughout Caldwell. And Robert here designed every foot of the 3 miles. So, I mean, we didn't just say, well, here, just create a promenade along the creek. We actually looked at every single lot. Now, have we gone to all the property owners? No. It's just a vision. It's just an idea. You would put together a team, and that's why having somebody there would have to go to each property owner and say, could we get an easement? What do you think? What are your options? What are your ideas? And things may change quite a bit. But it gives you a general idea of how having the promenade on some of these underutilized lots could really spur some kind of development there. That's tax base. So in our concept here, we put the Trader Joe's there, and we said, wouldn't it be cool if you had a Trader Joe's, and then you had the promenade in the creek, and then you could put like playground equipment, a park and everything. People go in, Trader Joe's is known for its snacks and its deli and everything. We thought, man, so that's one idea, but this is about spurring new tax base on this side of 84. And by the way, a Trader Joe's would be like, I think they're $60 to $70 million, one building. That's property taxes. And you wouldn't have to create a TIF district, you know, urban renewal to give them things because you're going to already give them the promenade right there. You're going to give them a fantastic amenity right there at their front door. So that's one idea. If we keep going all the way down now, you can see the fairgrounds at the bottom of your picture here, and you see the promenade. It does kind of go through. You see the one neighborhood down there. And there is already, the creek already goes through there, and there's kind of a trail outside their backyard. It's kind of a dirt trail along the creek already. And so those residences would probably love it because you'd just be making it a lot better. And I'm not sure what the easement situation is there, if it's even on their properties. Most of their properties are fenced behind that walkway. So that gives you some idea of what the promenade might look like, what it might feel like. This is 21st. We're trying to figure out how do we want the promenade to go over as few streets and sidewalks as we possibly can. 21st being the biggest, the widest, the most dangerous. So that's where we met Dave from Woody's, and we're sitting there. But there's got to be a way to do it. We kept thinking, you know, these are some of the challenges that you run into. That's why we say this is probably a 10, maybe even 15 years to actually realize this whole thing. And we start the middle, kind of work each way and take the easy pieces and get those done. Get grants and get whatever funding you can find, donations, whatever, to start creating that. The two areas that would be tough is going under 21st. And then the railroad tracks right by the Fair Event Center, you know, where the creek kind of goes underneath there. That's going to be the biggest challenge. It doesn't really make sense to go over the creek there because it would cost way more than going under the rail tracks. And so that would probably that's the one area where it'd be very tough to figure it. It would be expensive to go under the railroad tracks there. But I want to show you that.
Roger,
Yes.
can we take a quick, maybe 8 to 10 minute break?
Sure. I have like 3 slides left on Indian Creek, or do you want me to go ahead and take
Can
the
you guys
break?
hold it? All right, sweet, thank you.
Sorry about that. I'll hurry. So thank you, Mayor, for because I'm almost done. What you see in yellow there is once again, what we call underutilized. It doesn't mean they're not being utilized, but we just think that having the promenade along those would be a great asset. And you can see where Linden Avenue is, and if you were to look closely, you can even see the trails already extending beyond Linden Avenue. That's just where our cutoff was. So there's already something there. So with that, let me go ahead and finish this up. Oh, you know what? Well, let's go ahead, because I'll just put this slide up there and let it stay up there. We would have amenities all along the creek, trailhead parking. We would have all kinds of, there's a trellis you can see with seating there, some public art. There would be benches, there would be restrooms like every half mile. There would be all kinds of things. We even did a playground at the end of the RV park at that Arrowhead, what I call it Arrowhead parking lot by the fairgrounds. So they would have access to some things on the trail right there. So we did put these amenities all the way along the trail for this. And so this kind of just gives you a snapshot of the Indian Creek Promenade. And I think I'm pretty much, there would be interpretive signs like you find along Indian Creek and other cities. And those would be the amenities. And with that, I think we can go ahead. So all these amenities are included in that. Make sense?
All
Ready
right,
for a
thank
break?
you. We'll come back
Thank you, Mayor.
in 30 minutes after.
Okay, great.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you. All right, everyone, please take your seats. We're gonna go ahead and start back from a brief break and try to work out some technical issues with the laptop. All right, go ahead, Roger.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So, okay, here we go. Now I won't have to crook my neck backwards. I can actually see here a little bit. What you see on your screen here is the amenities that we included on the promenade. So just so you know, that's why, one of the questions that people are going to ask, well, how much would this cost? When I talked to the previous mayor last year, he said, well, doing the Indian Creek Promenade would be about $10 million. It would actually be probably about 20 million. Because going underneath the railroad at the Fair Event Center all by itself would be multiple $1 million. Plus, we wanted to make sure that along the promenade, you would have cameras that could be wired into the police station or wherever. There'd be Wi-Fi along the trail, which they're pretty much everywhere we went, we could get cell service. It includes restrooms, it includes the benches, it includes everything, bike racks, landscape buffers, drinking fountains and everything. So that is like the total price tag. But if you said, well, you know what, let's spend $1 million a year over the next 20 years, you'd have it done. Now, granted, costs are going to go up and it's cheaper to do sections and everything. And we did not put physical cost to this because it isn't a final design. It's a concept design. But we tried very, very difficult to route the promenade over the creek on where there was more underutilized lands or away from private residences that are pretty small lots, like along Rattlesnake Court area, those areas. Make sense? And so, I don't have to do that. So if we keep walking the promenade, this was a quote from the comprehensive plan. People love Caldwell's walkable downtown. However, much of the rest of the city is less friendly to pedestrians and cyclists. That was very key to the Indian Creek Promenade and creating something like this. Very key. By the way, we didn't come up with this idea. It's been floating around Caldwell for a long time. We just thought it was about time to actually take this great asset and make it into an attraction. And then finally, this is in the comprehensive plan, a continued effort to daylight remaining buried portions of Indian Creek and connect that trail with others nearby is critical to enhancing connections and throughout downtown and to the wider community. So once again, this is directly from the comprehensive plan. So there's nothing in here that contradicts that. When we go into these, you can see in the downtown area that's outlined in yellow is kind of our pedestrian core area. And we really want to make downtown more about pedestrians than vehicles. As a matter of fact, when we get into this, you're going to see right here is 9th Avenue from Blaine to Arthur. But notice the road right there, and notice it just disappeared. So the one thing we did in this plan, and I'll show you that in more detail, is we did close off that one block because we would love to see Keystone Pizza move from over the creek back. And if you've been in front of the theater, you notice how Arthur Street is a little bit wide. That's why I always parked. Not on Keystone's a lot, but there's like 2 spaces across from Happy Teriyaki. Well, if the city said, Keystone Pizza, we're going to give you that and down the road. And when we went and looked under Keystone Pizza, I'm sure it's structurally sound, but you can see the cross beams sagging. But we thought maybe down the road we could help Keystone Pizza move upland and have outdoor dining. They actually don't have any dining. It takes advantage of the view of the creek. So this is all about opening up the creek more. And even along here is one area where you're going to see that white line is we would extend the sidewalk that's along Blaine there to make it like 20 feet wide. Because this area of the promenade does go along Blaine Street, but we don't want it to be a narrow sidewalk. Somebody with a stroller or a bike can't get through. And so that white area you see there would be where we would actually cantilever out the promenade over the creek. And then it would go down there and kind of wrap around to where 9th is right now. So I'm just showing you concepts and how we tried to make the promenade work with what's there and not covering the creek. This covers that bank down there, but it doesn't actually cover the creek. And so I thought I was done with the promenade. And so here you can see other areas of the promenade. Down there, this is where the promenade would go into the railroad tracks. And there's a wide enough space. That's by the cell phone tower place. There is wide enough. We actually walked under there. So you could run the promenade there. The issue would probably be, and here is a close-up of that area and how the promenade would work under it. Right across the creek from that is just piles of concrete and debris that people have dumped. They used the whole creek as a dumping ground for years. And so that shows how that could work with the rail there. If you continue on down towards Linden, down there you can see how it goes by the fairgrounds and all of that area. But when you get right here to this area that you see circled in green, that's where we have to somehow go underneath the railroad tracks. And that's going to be the one big, so far, is kind of the bottleneck or the expensive thing to go under there. And this lot right now is just full of, there's abandoned trucks and vehicles. I mean, it's a garbage dump right there that's privately owned. But if you go in all the brush and everything, there's like little waterfalls and everything back there. It's really a gorgeous little piece. And right now it's just covered with tarps and junk and garbage. I'm going, this is such a great asset. It could be so cool. And here you can see that once you go underneath those railroad tracks, the canal actually connects there. And that canal goes on the other side of the fairgrounds and down and across Linden. And so this would connect all that together. And you can see here where it starts to integrate into those neighborhoods that are just south of the fairgrounds there. And there's already room outside of those yards for the promenade. So that's just kind of wrapping this up. We just feel that Indian Creek is such an amazing asset. And it goes right through the heart of your key spending district. And creating a 3-mile-an-hour promenade, you'd have people coming here year-round just to go walk the prom in Caldwell. That is how cool an asset this could be. And so, I mean, you might have overlooks like this with little picnic shelters and things, but we had so much fun designing this, and we know that this isn't the heavy lifting. The heavy lifting is whoever's put in charge to implement it. How do we phase it? Where do we phase it? How do we talk to the property owners? Which ones will give us easements? What do we need to do? How much will it cost? And you just design it in pieces. And so we did put in the plan to create an Indian Creek Promenade team. And that would include, obviously, things that aren't in here is like, well, you know what, who's going to maintain this? And if it's the Parks Department's going to maintain it, they might need, we figured this prom would have 3 full-time employees just working the prom. So we want you to understand it's not just building it, it's also taking care of it. And so we understand that it would probably take 3 full-time people year-round to sweep it, maintain it, make sure, take care of any vandalism, make sure we got monitors at the police station or where it's being monitored. So we do understand there is a cost. But the vision is there, and we believe that the return on investment would be well worth the cost. It would be, I really believe that next to Indian Creek Plaza, it would be your #1 draw to Caldwell. It would be walking the promenade all the way from the fairgrounds, all the way to the Rotary Pond Trail. And so we do understand there is a cost of maintaining it, and that's why Parks Department needs to be on it, Public Works needs to be on it, obviously other city planning and zoning need to be on economic development, because the promenade is a great sales pitch for redevelopment in this whole area. And then, of course, we want citizens involved, particularly citizens that are along the trail, people that own homes or own properties. We want to make sure they're there. So that's what I mean about this plan. It doesn't mean that what we put there is a done deal or that's where it should go. You have to put together a team, and they would, for years, this team would work with the city and work with the citizens and whoever's leading this effort to go through this whole process, and should we do a phase one, and where can we get funding, and who's gonna maintain it, and all of those issues. But this is creating the vision for what we think would be an amazing asset for the city of Caldwell. Next to that, the person, remember I said you need to have somebody that would be dedicated to this. Somebody has to go talk to all those 80 property owners that are along that creek and say, here's our idea, what do you think, what are your ideas? Do we need to move it on the other side? What are your plans for your property? Working with residences, so we understand that a lot of heavy lifting has to be done. And then finally, create a three-dimensional fly-through. We think it would be really cool. We kind of did one, but we couldn't do it three-dimensionally. That would just show how it would, it's a good way to sell it to the people you're trying to do, would be to create this three-dimensional fly-through of this creek the way we have it planned, and let people say, yeah, I want that piece in my property. So, that's the promenade. Finally done with that one. That's the biggest one. Any questions about the promenade at all? And I don't mind, you can ask the hard questions. I like the hard questions.
Councilor Olgut.
Yes, sir. I just thinking here, you're talking about ongoing maintenance of the promenade and things like that. Have you ever seen a city or anyone maybe lease advertising along the promenade to support the care?
Yes, and we see naming rights. So you could have like restrooms brought to you by such and such company. Absolutely, you could do naming rights, you can do sponsorships. Absolutely, there's no reason why. Now obviously we don't want to put, a fence covered with banners like you see at a baseball field. But there's no reason why you can't say an interpretive sign was brought to you by the Brooks family, and they paid for those interpretive signs. Or these benches and this trellis is sponsored by another family or an organization. We saw probably 40 or 50 of those opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that in other communities, and it's something we would highly recommend you do. We've even seen communities with a promenade like this where they actually have organizations like Adopt a Highway. They actually will adopt 1 mile. So you might, or a half mile. You might say, okay, this half mile is maintained by Crookham Company. I mean, I'm just picking on George there, but just, it could be, or by any other company. And what they do is just like Adopt a Highway. They go out there once a week, and so it's not always on the Parks Department, or Public Works or whoever. So you can also do those, and we highly encourage those. That really gets the citizens involved. Sometimes it's church groups. Church will say, we'll adopt half a mile, and you adopt half a mile, and we have 6 of those half-mile segments that people could adopt. Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked that. Okay, want you to move on? Okay. The Garden District. This is, the first thing we had here is create a Garden District team. This is an urban renewal project. It's already been approved by the city, and I'm just going to walk you through what we did with Arch Nexus for this. We do believe there should be, once again, a citizen-led team that would have Public Works, Parks Department, Planning and Zoning, Economic Development, but then have residents and businesses in the Garden District on that team to work with urban renewal in the city through this process. So urban renewal is your funding mechanism, but it always comes down to the city who owns the streets and the sidewalks. And one of the things in the comprehensive plan says close gaps in the sidewalk network. If you were to go on Chicago Street from 10th up to Elevate Academy, you'll see sections where there's sidewalks and sections where there's no sidewalks. You can see the little yellow circle there. There's a barricade where there's either roots rooting up the sidewalk and everything. Those have been there for the year we've been working on the project. This neighborhood has been so overlooked. It was my one thing with the city. I just go, these people, when we met with them, I about wanted to cry. They did not ask for anything more than every other neighborhood gets. They said, all we need is some street lighting. All we need is some sidewalks. All we need is some stop signs. I mean, they're asking for the basic necessities that every other neighborhood gets. And so you'll see here that we have sidewalks, then we don't have sidewalks. We've got, You know, and so we wanted to create Chicago Street so it would look like this. Now, Chicago Street is fairly narrow, not like Fifth Avenue. And so Chicago Street said, why don't we put a wide sidewalk on one side of the street so that couples with, like you see here, with an infant or a stroller or wheelchairs can have a wide enough, rather than do like a 4-foot sidewalk on both sides, let's do one on one side, create a landscape buffer, put street trees every 40 feet and put lampposts every 100 to 150 feet. Decorative lampposts. This is a historic district. And run down there. And by the way, on one side of the street, some of those homes don't have driveways, so they need on-street parking. So you'll see in this, there's on-street parking on one side, but not the other side. That way we still have 2 lanes of traffic. We have the parking on one side and a nice sidewalk with a landscape buffer on the other. Now, this is a concept we use, so I didn't use real houses that are right there and everything. But it gives the idea of what would happen between 10th and all the way to Elevate Academy. And in front of Elevate Academy, they already have nice wide sidewalks. So that is the idea for Chicago Street all the way down. And that is part of the urban renewal plan. We worked with ArchNexus on that, and so there is our sidewalk features for that. That's what we see here. It would just make a world of difference for them, for kids catching the school bus. You can actually have the places where it narrows down a little bit and actually have a pull-off for school buses for kids. But it gives them a safe, beautiful neighborhood. And you can enter Chicago Street from 10th, you know, when you come off the freeway. And it creates a good first impression, and it lasts all the way through the neighborhood. In the district, when it goes all the way down, you can see Chicago, a high-level view. And you'll see the sports park. You see it says Archery Park there. I'll get to that in a minute. But you can see how we did that sidewalk all up and down Chicago Street. So I just wanted to show you that. And here you can just see it, upper view, how we did that on one side. And the reason sidewalks on one side was because the street is not wide enough to accommodate wide enough sidewalks that 2 people could walk side by side on both sides. And this will be much less expensive to develop than having 2 sets of sidewalks. So that was that part. And then the other thing was creating an Interstate 84 buffer and community gardens. There are so many spots along the street there, and you can see 84 in the background here in this photo. You can see here is more of this. All of these could be, and in the ArchNexus and in our plan, does create a sound wall along Interstate 84 for this neighborhood. I'll show you a concept of that. I will talk about the semi-trucks in a minute. I could not take a picture anywhere in this district without getting semi-trucks parked in front of people's houses. But you can see all of this could be beautiful park area with a promenade. If I go down to the far, what would that be? That would be the east end, and start working our way up there. You see, we created kind of a landscape buffer that goes between the streets and these residences all the way up. So right now what you're seeing is a series of slides where the green belt basically just follows up along 84. And you see, we actually created a sidewalk there. So somebody can walk inside the sound wall all the way up there. And we created, you can see here, we created an adventure park there. Don't know if it'll happen or not, but we wanted to create a neighborhood park there that would have some kids' amenities. When we talk about an adventure park, we're talking about rope climbs and things that recreate physical activity. So for kids and families. And then you can see at the top of your slide there, a community garden. Wouldn't it be cool if you had this in the garden district? You could see the sound wall back there. And they could have their whole community garden there, which neighbors could say, this is my section, or they could pool together and it would be run by the neighborhood, by the garden district. But that kind of a sound wall could go all along there. Sound walls are not cheap, but it really makes an enormous difference for the people that live within the district. So there you see a concept of the community garden that would be in the garden district. This is Lions Park. We did expand Lions Park. We thought, why not use some more of these lots and really make that whole strip you know, a really nice buffer there. Right now, it's pretty sad, most of it. And so we created some parking areas, some pickleball courts and basketball half courts and some things. It's really expanding Lions Park, and maybe Lions Club, maybe Rotary, Kiwanis. This doesn't all have to be city. Once again, we can look to other organizations to come in and help these things happen. You know, the one challenge we have, and here there's like an auto repair place. We didn't take any of those out. They're still there. And so there is room for some little commerce, and this is up towards the north end, or the west side of the Garden District near Elevate Academy. But there's no reason why we can't have some commerce along there. And then this says, work to eliminate blight and areas of deterioration with infill development. And a lot of that buffer strip along 84 there is just underdeveloped or undeveloped. There's some places where there's 40 or 50 junk cars, you know, so you can just see that there's lots of development opportunity along this strip, or redevelopment opportunity over time. Once again, we're not taking anybody's homes from them, but maybe down the road we acquire some, or maybe they just clean their places up and we incorporate them with beautiful gardens and a sidewalk behind them and a retaining wall. There probably should be a whole lot more if you had a buffer wall there, a sound wall. Once you get up towards the Elevate Academy, we run into where Centennial comes into this, and that brings us to the Caldwell Sports Park. By the way, any questions on Chicago Street? Anything there?
Councilor Tillman?
Just real quick, you were talking about sidewalks on one side of Chicago, not on the other. Is all of that in an existing easement, or is that something that did you look into that, or is that
I
something
didn't
that-
look into all the easements and everything.
So
but
that could be something the city may have to purchase in order to
Well,
expand?
most of the sidewalks we put are on the city street. What we did is we still have 2 lanes of traffic, but right now you have parking on both sides. So we get rid of the parking on this side to extend the sidewalk out. So we're hoping, but you know, we didn't go out there and measure it all. And there are already some sidewalks there, but they're pretty narrow. So it could be that we might have to go back another 2 or 3 feet into somebody's property, but we tried to keep as much of it. That's a really good question, by the way. We tried to keep as much as we could on the street by narrowing the street down to 12-foot lanes, creating a wide sidewalk, you know, and maybe you say, well, you know what, we really can't do a 12-foot sidewalk, might need to do a 10-foot sidewalk.
Right.
We just want to make sure that we have a wide enough sidewalk that people are not walking out in the street or.
Right. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
good
people didn't
question.
think that we were gonna be coming in and taking the front.
Yeah,
10
no,
feet of their
we're
property.
hoping not to do that, yeah. In
Right.
Chicago Street, it's fairly narrow. That's why we had parking on one side. And the parallel parking is usually, I think, what is it, 8, 9 feet, roughly. And so that 9 of our 12 feet, but we do have a landscape. So we're actually about 15 feet there.
Right.
And so we're hoping that that gives us enough room without digging into people's front yards, yeah. But that's a really good question, an important one. Up at any other questions on that? Mayor? Good, okay. The sports park is up at this end, so you can see it up there. This taking this whole area, and there are some uses in there now, but one of the things that we really thought that where Caldwell has some beautiful sports parks, so don't get me wrong, near the high school, Memorial Park, you do have some beautiful sports parks, but we thought, wouldn't it be cool if when you're coming east on I-84, you see this property. I thought, wow, what an introduction to Caldwell. If you could look over there and you see all these baseball diamonds, soccer fields, a track field with picnic grounds, plenty of parking, it would really kind of wrap around Elevate Academy and would be a great asset to even them. And this area is, and we didn't go up into I-84's drainage there, where the exit and on-ramp is. And so this is kind of that Caldwell Sports Park. It might look something like this. It would be so cool. And when you attract sports tournaments, like baseball tournaments, soccer tournaments, they go to cities where we've got 4, 6 fields, rather than saying, well, we're going to have one game over at Memorial Park, we're going to have one game over here by the high school, we're going to have one game over here by YMCA, we're going to have one. They like that and so we create a place right here. And so we create this asset right there, and it has like, in Robert's design of this, we've got like 900 parking spaces there, public restrooms, picnic areas. And what's nice about this, it can be phased. You can say, you know what, the city needs 4 soccer fields, let's build those, and in 3 years, we'll do the first baseball diamond. See what I mean? So it's not like, let's go build a big sports park. The nice thing about building a sports park here, some of this is probably in a flood zone. What's nice about sports parks is we don't have buildings in the flood zone. So if there's ever time where it's fairly low drainage, we have the ability to let it drain off. You know, like during the winter months when you have that and people are not out playing baseball. So you have that ability to do that. In this drawing, you can see there's like tennis courts, basketball half courts, there's the soccer fields. We believe the baseball diamond should be lit, so at night you could do baseball tournaments. What's really nice about this, we'd have a trail going under Centennial Way that connects you right to the dog park and to Wittenberger Park. I mean, we're combining all these parks on both sides of Centennial now with pathways under Centennial. So it's just, this is kind of your recreation area, and later on you have a whitewater park going up the river. We even designed in here this adventure park that could be, you know, could be developed over time. And you may say, well, you know what, we actually would like to do another baseball diamond instead of the adventure park. But once again, we just wanted to create this great recreational, sports-oriented thing. And the College of Idaho needs a track. They need a track, and they want to put it somewhere. We thought, well, we actually designed a track in this, so they could even hold sports there. And so we have lots of bleachers that can be moved around, etc. And with this one, let's create another team. Let's create a team for the sports park. Once again, Parks Department. Somebody has to maintain it, so we understand that. So there'd be Parks Department, and by the way, the fields could have naming rights. So all your fields could have, the soccer complex could have naming rights, and here's where you can do advertising on the fencing around your baseball diamonds and everything, all to help support the Caldwell Sports Park or Sports Complex. And so we'd want to create a team for that, of sports enthusiasts, YMCA, the high school, College of Idaho, all the users of this would be part of that team. So what you'd have is separate teams working on different projects, you know, as they come up on the city's list. Okay, this year let's tackle that, let's put together a team, and let's start the process. We do see this sports park phased over time. We don't see it just going and building it all. And so you just use the ones you need. And there was like an archery complex over by the water treatment plant, those kinds of things. Now, we'll go down into the 5th. Any questions on that, by the way? The sports park? No? Okay. 5th Avenue is
quick.
the other.
Have you had any consultations with ITD as far as their stormwater runoff in that area?
Not yet. We do know that there is some. We did talk to district engineer shortly, but we haven't dug into all of the who owns what and where it is and where the runoff is and the kind of drainage. And so once again, we were just trying to create the vision. We even at one point were thought, well, could we go put some of this over at Wittenberger Park just to create some things there? So we haven't done any in-depth there, yeah. So, and we do know that's going to be an issue.
Councilor Tillman.
And just real quick, I had asked Robin, and just for an information, it looks like a lot of that we could use some impact fee for as well from parks, so.
The park expansion, but just depends on the land purchasing and such, right?
Right.
Like who owns what. All right, thank you.
Okay, sound good? The 5th Avenue, it says develop consistent streetscapes along corridors with district landscaping signage, similar placemaking elements. All these quotes you're seeing are from the comprehensive plan. And with the Veterans Gardens, which we love, we think it's awesome there. That's really what gave us the idea to call it the Garden District. But when you go up 5th Avenue, this is what you see today, pretty much. And we would like to see this convert from that to this. And 5th Avenue does have the room to do a center median, 1 lane each way, and have wide sidewalks on both sides. But we wanted to make 5th Avenue, you know, 5th Avenue and Main is your connection to this district to downtown. And so we thought if we can make Fifth look really great and we can get people down Main Street to go up Fifth, they could see this. And so here you see an overhead of Fifth Avenue, and you can see that we have a landscape median down the street, and we have buffers on each side and sidewalks on both sides going all the way up and down Fifth from basically from Blaine. Well, we mainly did from Maine up to the Interstate 84 up there. Was it Galveston Street, I think? Yeah, and so this would be kind of how this would look. And I got more on this I'll tell you about. But right here you can see, you can see kind of a plaza there and some other things that I will show you. And that brings us to another thing in the content. It's to support development that provides a range of experience and activities that are welcoming, inclusive to all demographics, including families, seniors, youth, individuals with disabilities. When we were here last year, we noticed that there was the, what do they call that? Is it a Hispanic market or whatever that they hold in that parking lot, which we think is an awesome event. We thought, man, wouldn't it be great if we could create a place for them to do this without always having to take an entire parking lot? That would actually be set up for it. It's a great event. It's well attended. Love the food. They've got music. I mean, you name it. It's really a cool thing. But with the short supply of parking, we thought, well, what if we actually created a place for that in the Garden District? And then it also, in the comprehensive plan, it says strive to maintain a ratio of 5 acres of public parks for every 1,000 residents. That is why the green belt along there, that is why the wide sidewalks on Chicago, that is why we would like to do this. 5 acres for every 1,000 residents. That's in the comprehensive plan, so this helps you fulfill that. So we thought this parking lot, it is, I believe Diamante and the restaurant there probably owns this lot. But we thought, well, you know, the city owns a lot right across the street. Right now it's full of semi trucks. And we thought, well, what if, and remember, it's a vision, it's an idea. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen like this. But what if we took that lot right there, and they call it the Diamante, I think it's Diamante Restaurant and Event Center. What if we created something like this on that spot? Wouldn't that be cool? And we put the parking across the street on the lot that the city already owns. So we moved the parking for them, their residents, for their owners, and we put a plaza right next to it. We thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had the Fifth Avenue Plaza? We have Indian Creek Plaza, we have another, this is much smaller, it wouldn't have ice rink and water features, but it creates a central gathering place where you can bring in vendors and musicians and have a stage. You might even have a permanent stage back there like you see in this rendering, this example right here. And so we thought, wouldn't that would be just such a great neighborhood. We really want to save this neighborhood. Out of the comprehensive plan, there's strong desire for more commercial mixed use like downtown Indian Creek Plaza that are well connected to neighborhoods and similarly walkable and amenable to community gatherings and events. And that was really key to creating this here. Once again, we're just staying glued to the comprehensive plan. Along Fifth Avenue, we thought what kind of developers would go in Fifth Avenue. It's a fairly lower income neighborhood. And so we're probably not going to get people to spend millions of dollars to build office complexes or big restaurants when they can build them right in the core of downtown. And so we thought, what kind of businesses could go well in this neighborhood without spending a fortune? We don't want high-rise. We don't want to gentrify this neighborhood. We want to keep it low scale. And so we thought, what if we had a landscape nursery? And what if that landscape nursery took, you can see here, took several blocks just back 100 feet, like they might take this 100 feet on this block, and this block. And that is a huge need. You can see we did a restaurant over there. But we thought, man, we'd have this plaza, and then from the plaza coming down, you could do something along this line. You can see 3 blocks there, and you can see we didn't take away anything that's there. Right now, it's just all semi-parking for the most part. I'm sure they're privately owned, but we did not take out any houses. We just made it fairly shallow. You know, it's no deeper than this room and the council chambers, and we thought if we could do that and then go over block, we might have 1 block that'd be all garden materials like pots, planters, annuals, Another block might have trees and other gardening things. They could build like greenhouses there and everything, be low scale. It fits, it's in the garden district. It would be feasible in this district for private sector to do something like this, where it's going to be a challenge to get somebody to spend tens of millions of dollars in this district commercially when there's so many other commercial opportunities in Caldwell. And so with this, you can see one there, one there, one there. We did kind of these 3 blocks. And we just thought this would be just an incredible place to have a nursery. We actually went, you know the nursery that's out on 2026 out there? And I don't know if it's actually in Caldwell or if it's in Meridian. But we went out there and asked them and said, would you ever consider, open up like a satellite right in town in Caldwell? And they go, where? And they said, yeah, we'd look at it. And that was just off the cuff, no commitment or anything. I just thought, well, if a nursery would do that, and it's close, it's on this side of 84, it's closer to where all your residents live, and we thought, man, we could have one whole block be edibles, one whole block be beautification, and one block could be where you go get bark and, a drainage rock and those kinds of things. Make sense? So that was the idea of that. With that, then the other challenge we have is we want Fifth to be beautiful all the way down to Main Street, but now we've got the recycling plans. And our idea was to create these buffers that you see on your screen. These are landscape buffers that are like 5 feet tall, and they're about 10 feet deep, and they actually have street trees growing along them. And what we're trying to do is put lipstick on a pig, so to speak. Because we don't want the recycling plants to go away. They create a lot of jobs. They need the rail spur. Originally, we thought, man, this would be prime redevelopment, but it would probably take millions and millions of dollars just to clean up the sites. So we thought, well, for right now, let's get Fifth, let's get Chicago, let's get the I-84 buffer, let's create the railroad crossing at Kimball there needs, you can barely walk across that. It's so bad. Let's level that out and make that more pedestrian friendly. And then let's do these landscape buffers and put them around there. The offices for the recycling plant have done a great job. They're in front of their offices where they have the arch. It's beautifully landscaped, and they've done some landscaping. We thought, well, maybe if we did these buffers through this whole area, maybe they would actually agree to maintain them, since we're just trying to create a visual buffer to these recycling plants. And so that's our idea for that area. And here you can see where the transition is from Fifth to Main. And on Main Street, we really want to see retail go from Fifth all the way to 10th over time. Your retail is you don't have near enough retail, and I'll get into that. But right here, we put on the corner of Fifth on both sides where it is Main, maybe redevelopment. There are buildings there. Once again, we're not taking anybody out of any building. But maybe down the road, they say, well, as retail expands this way, we'll take our construction company office and move it upstairs and let retail go downstairs. So these are just options for builders based on highest and best use for the people that own these properties. If you look down there now, this is what you see. The buildings you see on the left, on the right is that University of Idaho, the Extension Institute building, which we still believe the city should get and then sell it to private sector, put it on the tax rolls to be redeveloped so we can get retail down to this area. If we can get retail to come down to Fifth and then get people to walk up Fifth, all of a sudden we join 2 important neighborhoods in our area. And so this is just another view of that. While we're in the Garden District, I want to talk about abatement and code enforcement. I do not want anybody to give planning and zoning a bad time about this, because I will tell you that when I met with your previous mayor, I complained about these semi-trucks because they complained about them. And he told me, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but he told me, Roger, I personally gave them a pass to be there because I don't want those businesses to leave Caldwell. So just so you know, so I don't want to say, well, how come planning and zoning isn't enforcing this? And I'm not even sure, maybe, but I told that mayor, I told him, I said, you know, Mayor, if any other neighborhood had 65 semis parked on their streets, you bet the city would be hearing about it. So why here? Why here? And so that, to me, it's you got to treat these neighborhoods equally. And I kept looking over by the Rotary Ponds, all of that gravel area out there. Can we lease that to these people for $1 a month and let them park their semis out there somewhere? And the people in this neighborhood's the one. So don't just look at me. The neighborhood said, they even told me, said, Roger, how would you like those sitting in front of your house for weeks at a time, year round? I go, no, I hear you. And last time I was over there, I counted 65 semis parked on streets in this little neighborhood. They also were turning in their neighbors who have abandoned cars piled in their driveways and on their lots, and refrigerators and junk piled everywhere. And these are the people that live in the district ratting out their neighbors. And we actually have I worked in a place called Battle Mountain, Nevada, that the Washington Post called the armpit of America, where we actually worked with metal recycling companies who came out and paid property owners like $100 for every abandoned car, $50 for every washing machine. They came out and got it all. Now, granted, we had to deal with titles on abandoned cars. Do you have the title? Where is it? How do we deal with those issues? But we've actually found recycling companies and everything that would come in and work with these neighborhoods, so it's not always a law enforcement deal. Actually work with them to start removing some of the as far as the semis parking on trucks, I don't even know what city ordinances are there, but it's just not the right place to put in a residential zone parking semi-trucks on the street for weeks at a time until they open up a spot in Washington State to take the recycled cardboard up there. But I really want, one of our recommendations, provide some extra support for planning and zoning and the police department for about a year or so we can clean this up. And this is a request from that neighborhood, not us. And I just felt, if I can be a voice for this little neighborhood, I'm happy to do it. And so I really believe, but you know what, you can't just say, okay, go start enforcing it and everything here, and the police up there saying, you know what, we're going to give you a warning ticket for the first 30 days, but after 30 days, you got to get your semis off these residential streets. It would be good if there was some solutions where they could go, because I agree with your previous mayor. You don't want to kick businesses out of town, but it's just not right. If those trucks are parked in the Studenberg district, or any neighborhood down by the lake, oh my God, you'd hear about it so fast. So with that one more in the Garden District, and that is the active senior housing. We took this area that you see in yellow here, and yes, there are 2 or 3, 4 residents there, you know, property owners right there, and we thought, what is the highest and best use of this? It's close to 84, it's close to Centennial, it's close to Wittenberger Park, it's close to the dog park, it's close to where the promenade would go, right along the creek there. What could we do in this site? And so this is kind of what it looks like right now. And so we originally were going to put multifamily there. And then I was talking to Councilmember Register, and one of our concerns is if we put more multifamily, how are we going to impact the school districts? And it was really a good thing. And so we said, you know, that's right. But then we started looking at active adult living. The Boise area is almost last in the country with 55 plus condominium or apartment living. We're not talking about Alzheimer's or assisted living or age in place. We're talking about active adult living. And so we thought there's demand in this whole region for that. And so we said, yeah, we could still make this multifamily, but by putting active adults here, then we don't impact the school district, and we still create a great place with easy access to 84, easy access to the whole area. The promenade would run right through there. And then we took one corner down the bottom on Simplot Boulevard, this little plot of land. And we thought, you know what, there's no service stations. You have to leave downtown in order to go to a service station. We thought right there on Simplot Boulevard would be a great place for a gas station. Now, this piece of property happens to be owned by, is it okay if I say it? Owned by Bob Carpenter. He never said to put a gas station there. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure that Bob wants to have a gas station there. But that's the point, that he didn't say, Roger, you only put on my land what I want on my land. We just thought highest and best use of that might be a gas station. But we would never go to Bob and say, Bob, you have no choice. It has to be a gas station or else, you know, that's just not who we are or what we want to do. But from the highest and best use standards, if we were going to put one, that's where we would put it. So, but I just want to let you know that even the committee we worked with didn't dictate what we put where. They really gave us free rein to come up with what we thought would be best long term. And then that would open up, you know, if we start zooming in really close there, you know, it creates all kinds of things that, oops, that got moved. All those letters should be over on the creek side. Not sure what happened to that slide right there. But all of those things will be along the creek side over there. So let me show you this one. There we go. Now you see that get transition. So if you had all of those condos over there or apartments, it could be a mix of condominiums and apartments, then you'd have the promenade right there, and then you've got the creek, and on the other side of the creek is where some of the recycling is, and then you've got the rail tracks. One nice thing about the rail here is it goes under Centennial. So it's not like you have to extend the quiet zone, because the quiet zone really starts at like 4th. So right here we're okay because they're not using their horns unless they need to. And so we didn't think it would affect this residential community that much, because as long as they're going under Centennial there, there's no intersections they're crossing. So that's kind of the idea for this spot. And there'd be trailer parking. See how these things all integrate with the Indian Creek Promenade and the type of development that could go there. Having a promenade there would be a sales pitch for somebody that wants to build this active retirement community. And so can you imagine walking along and seeing something like this? That'd be awesome. You can see the rail on the one side, the promenade, and then some of this housing right there. And this is actually slightly different than what the plan was, but it just shows how flexible you could be with this. So really cool idea there. And then the active senior housing, the next steps would be just to recruit somebody. But if the promenade becomes a reality, and you could even say, you know what? If you build that there, maybe an impact fee, or maybe you would help us build the promenade. Maybe they would even sponsor it. Maybe they would build that promenade for the city, public, because it benefits their residents, it benefits the city, and it benefits the use of that property. So those are the kinds of things. This is why you need to have somebody dedicated to working on this. And then finally, in the Garden District, is developing pole banner signage and things so that when people pull into the district, that they know that they're there. And of course, the Rose House is in the Garden District. We can't wait for that to open. And so that is kind of the Garden District. There was much more to the planning in the Garden District, but because the tax base isn't excessive in that district, we couldn't do everything that was in the plan under what we can expect to get from urban renewal and from the feasibility study they did. That's why we concentrated on Chicago. We concentrated on the buffer along 84, and we concentrated on 5th. And we did that just because of that. One thing you need to know is in that tax increment financing district, the boutique hotel that would go across the creek on Main Street, you know where we're talking about, next to the Tillian Apartments, is actually in the Garden District's TIF. So downtown wouldn't get any of that money. But that would be a big project that would help get their district built. And I believe it even includes where these adult family, I think that's also included in their district. So those would be two big projects that would help fund that district. So, any questions about the Garden District? Everybody good?
Going once, going twice.
Let's go into the Plaza District. And then after that, we got just one more. So, this is the number one top priority that we would say for the city of Caldwell is a parking structure downtown, period. And I'll explain why. This is in the comprehensive plan. With growing popularity, downtown parking has been strained at peak times. Potential future parking structures should be explored, but with a focus on maintaining active uses along the streets. That's in the comprehensive plan that you adopted as a city. Additionally, it says increase opportunities for shared parking near gathering places to maximize access to amenities and activities. That's why the parking across the street from the Diamante Restaurant and Event Center, and why we need parking structure downtown. Here is kind of the vision. This is Blaine looking west, so to speak, northwest. Where the fire department is, they are planning on moving. The fire department in Old City Hall, you know where I'm talking about, on that side of Blaine is on the left. That'd be ideal for a conference center, and I'll explain more of that when we get to it. On the right is City Hall, and you can see to the right of that, where the parking is along the creek, the highest and best use of creekfront is never parking. Waterfront should be lodging, it should be restaurants, it should be retail. And then you can see where a parking structure would go. So this, in this vision, remember this is a vision, doesn't have to be here, but of all the places, where would we put a parking structure? This is how it would pan out. It would basically go from, is that Fifth down there? Yeah, Fifth, in front of City Hall, over a little bit into that parking area, and then a hotel would extend over. With this parking structure that what we designed in there conceptually would accommodate more than 700 vehicles, which would triple your downtown parking in one fell swoop. Now, and I'm not done by any means. And we would actually create, if you did a conference center down the road, you'd create a sky bridge from the parking across Blaine over to where the police station, where the fire station is currently in Old City Hall. You would have a sky bridge from the parking garage, could go right into City Hall. You could have a sky bridge go right from the parking garage right into the hotel. That would be right there. One nice thing about doing a parking structure like this is the fact that the property where we wanted to put it is one of the most underutilized pieces in the core downtown area. There are some businesses on it. I'll show you that in a second. But this is kind of a vision. If you're on Blaine, looking that way, the conference center's on the left. And by the way, this, we did this rendering. It's a little bigger than the conference center would actually be. But then you can see a sky bridge going over. You can see like a hotel where the parking lot is. You can see the parking structure down there. So that sky bridge would come across, would extend right next to the parking structure and be sandwiched between the hotel and the parking structure. And that parking structure accommodating 700 cars would be incredible. It would solve your parking in one fell swoop. So during this process, I contacted Griffin Swinnerton, which is a company that does design, build, finance projects all over the country. They're working on one that we're involved in Pflugerville, Texas right now, and they're doing it for the city. What they do is they come in and they actually design the parking structure, or they could do the parking structure, the conference center, and a wine and culinary center. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. They just say, we'll take on all three of those. And they design it, they build it, they finance it. Yes, the city has to pay for it. So I had them do some preliminary research, and this is just very preliminary. We did not want this to be urban renewal. one of the challenges Caldwell has is we have so many tax increment financing districts where the new tax is paying for all these infrastructure projects. And meanwhile, you're having to live off of fees rather than tax base until those TIF districts expire. So I said there's got to be another way you could finance a parking structure without making it a TIF district and losing all that tax base from new hotels and stuff. And so their financial, this is what they said. They said Caldwell carries approximately $14 million in government debt, which is low relative to its size and growth trajectory. Okay, fair enough. They said city is using about 8% of its legal debt limit, which your legal debt limit is roughly about 169 million, okay? And the city has very good financial stability. And then they said, you know, debt service, sorry, I'm looking, this is kind of small on my screen. Debt service capacity, general fund, there's nothing there. You're almost there using that, using general, financing with general fund. It says internal policy caps this at 5% of property tax revenue, which is internal, meaning you, the council, set that standard, and you're pretty close to that. So we're not going to go to general funds. So then we thought, well, let's see, enterprise utility infrastructure funds. This is supported by user fees rather than taxes. And significantly more borrowing capacity. You have 25 million to 75 million depending on rate structure, growth, and capital planning. So you have room under this. This is how you build sewage treatment plants, parking structures, those kinds of facilities, parks, sports complexes, those YMCAs, all those kinds of things. Well, your YMCA was an urban renewal project. But key takeaways, legally, Caldwell could issue over $150 million more debt and still remain within statutory limits. We're not suggesting that. We're just saying there's room there. This parking garage would be about $23 million, including land purchases. It's about $35,000 per space. That's the problem with parking garage. It's not cheap. Am I right, Scott? Pretty close. Okay? The reason I asked him is because he built these things. I should have said Councilman Tillman. So sorry about that. Being a little informal there. Practicality capacity is much higher there. Infrastructure funding flexibility remains strong, especially through utility-backed borrowing. City is financially stable, but increasing growth pressure with rising demands. I mean, that was their comments. So what we would recommend, and this is, remember, this is a vision. We're just trying to figure out a way to solve your biggest need, is that if you contract with them, they will come in and work with you through this whole thing. I actually invited them to come today, but they couldn't get here. They're based out of Dallas, Texas, their public sector side, and he couldn't get up here today. But they would be happy to come and talk to you about how this works. And they live within there. They will give you a bid for it, and they have to live within the bid. So because they're designing it, building it, and financing it. And they'll walk you through everything. It's way even over my head how they do these. But this is how you fund things like that. That way you're not taking away the tax base. One thing that's really important in this is I do believe that Caldwell should, and I don't think you have, a parking and transportation authority. A parking and transportation authority has usually 6 to 7 members. They are usually appointed by the mayor, and they serve under direction of the mayor, and they set policy. They would set parking rate fees for a parking structure. I will get into this whole thing in a minute, a little more. But the council approves the building it, financing it, but they kind of set the policy and bring it to the council for you to adopt. Does that make sense? But we believe having a parking and transportation authority, because I'm going to finish this with transportation. We think they need to be combined. We think if people park down at the fairground, we should be able to provide them up here without having to drive between the two. And I'll explain that. And so we think that you should create a Caldwell Parking and Transportation Authority and create an actual plan. And I will talk about the lots where we want to put this right now, but actually create a transportation parking plan. You've done some of that in the past, but some of it's pretty outdated. And I think you could revisit that, especially if you adopt this vision. Here's kind of the direction we want to go. When it comes to this property, this is where kind of the hotel would sit. So you see City Hall at the very left side of your screen there, and the hotel would go, and the parking garage would actually come across. So there'd actually be, you know, some space between City Hall and even where the hotel starts. But in the comprehensive plan, it says encourage visitor infrastructure such as hotels, restaurants, electric vehicle charging stations, conference spaces is in here, and other similar amenities at gateways and within mixed-use centers. It's there. So once again, if you could do this with a nice, attractive, and that $35,000 of space gives you an attractive facade. It's not just a concrete bunker. It gives you some brick, some stone, some things that fit into the historic nature of Caldwell, and you can see the hotel will be right there. That hotel is about 113 rooms. Did you know that people will pay $25 to $30 a month more to be on the backside overlooking the creek? See, so sometimes you don't have to create incentives by giving them stuff. You just say, you're going to get the creek. And they could buy, by the way, they could buy that property, you know, from the city. And that would help pay for the parking structure. But the other thing you need to understand is in the comprehensive plan, it says integrate more housing near and within downtown to create a residential base to support local business, create vibrancy, extend past working hours. Hotels is considered occupancy. So we want to put 3 hotels right in downtown. And both those hotels there is housing. And hoteliers can eat at restaurants more than residents. Because they're not fixing food in their hotel room, hopefully. So this is what you see from Arthur Street, looking right across. And this is what that might be. So this is the other side of that. We put a Holiday Inn Express there. It doesn't have to be a Holiday Inn Express. But this is the creek side of that same hotel. And then ensure new development pays for necessary improvements needed to mitigate the development's impact on infrastructure systems and services provided by the city. Here's the scoop about the parking garage. Without shared parking, you cannot build downtown hotels. You cannot build additional restaurants. You cannot build additional retail. You can't build your Class A office space. You can't do additional upper story. 7th Avenue Plaza, some other things I'm sure we can't do it. We need to have shared parking. If we build a hotel across the creek on Main Street, they'd have enough for people to drop off, but they would need valet parking over to this parking garage. You gotta have the parking in order to support these developments. And so, here's some suggestions. Do a parking transportation authority, development impact fees. This would be one idea. This is one idea. You know, if we had those 2 hotels, one across the creek and the one next to City Hall, that would be about 200 hotel rooms. Most codes require 1 space per room. So they're going to need 200 parking spaces. What if you said, you know, surface parking costs $6,000 a space to develop, $6,000 space to develop, not counting land acquisition. What if we charge $10,000 per parking space? Just those 200 hotel rooms would be paying several $1 million to help you build your parking garage. So public-private partnerships is what we're imposing. So if we have, so the 180 spaces, $2, you know, condo, or they can lease spaces, and is something wrong?
It's not on any of the TVs.
What's that?
It's not on any of the
Oh,
TVs.
did it? I'm not sure we're having technical
Do we want to take a quick 8-minute break? Yeah, let's take a quick break. We've been going for a little over an hour.
Okay,
All right, we'll get back
Thank
to
you
it.
very much.
Yeah, yeah.
sorry, I'm sorry. This? Oh, there it goes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start back. We're going to try and wrap this up by 12, but thank everyone again for being here, and let's proceed.
So just to continue where we're at about parking, we do believe it needs to be a public-private partnership. It needs to be, and there's just no reason why. Hotels can't help pay for it, restaurants. You're going to see some other things in here. And by the way, we do believe there should be a fee to park in the parking structure. In the parking structure. And the way we've seen it work in other cities for parking structures is like $2 an hour up to a maximum of $6, and after that it's free. It incentivizes people to stay longer. And then you could also do permit fees, so the hotels would help pay for the parking garage, but they would also lease out or pay a monthly fee for the spots that are dedicated for their hotel guests. So they're not just paying for the parking garage, they're also paying for the usage of the garage after it's built. And so that way you have the revenues. And I just did a video that you'll find on YouTube called Myth Busting, the 6 major public parking argument about paid versus free, time limits, walking distances, and all of those. I would encourage you to see it. It's on YouTube under Destination Development, and it's like 20 minutes long, and it gives you a good thing. So, because I don't have time to go through it all right now. We could spend the whole 4 hours just on parking. One thing I want to make sure that you know is not in the plan. We are not advocating for paid parking downtown. I personally believe that down the road it is something you should consider. However, if you ever go down there, we're not going there because we don't want one issue to kill this entire plan. So we're not going there. But when you do that, if you do that down the road, one thing to always remember is parking fees generated in downtown should never go into general funds for general fund purposes. So if the goal last time was to get more general fund revenues, that money should be reinvested into the parking and into the infrastructure. That is how that works across cities. So if you ever go down that road, just remember, you're not doing it for another general fund. You'd be doing it to support parking downtown. Can make sense? But we're not going there with this. We're just not going to go there. However, I will talk about the property. Typically, properties are done in executive session. The way cities normally do property acquisition is they will normally get a real estate agent that has an undisclosed buyer, and then that will say, I represent a client who would like to buy or option these properties. Unfortunately, I put that in an email and it went to the public, and so cat's out of the bag with these property owners anyway. And what happens is when you don't do that, property owners, usually cities, and I've worked in almost 2,800 cities. When property owners find out that cities or government agencies are buying property, you're going to pay more. So in Caldwell, you're probably going to pay more now that that has been released to the public, if you end up even doing it here. But these are the areas we're thinking. What is there now is there's a little Mexican restaurant there that we would love to see on 5th. There is an auto lube place that's there. There's another one that just got turned into a vape shop. There is a little house there. There are some properties there, but of all the places in downtown, we walked everywhere. We wanted to make sure it was a 2-block walk from 10th, 9th, all the way down to 5th. We wanted to make sure the parking garage, so there was really very few locations. You cannot put the parking garage where the fire station and Old City Hall are. The reason being, the creek was under there, and the foundation, a parking garage weighs a lot. If we put a conference center there, it doesn't weigh that much. It's a big empty box. So we did think about putting it where City Hall is, because the public already owns the land. But because we talked to a couple engineers, and they said, because of the underground, it would probably cost you another $10 million to put parking over there because of what was under the ground. The creek used to be over there. So that's why this location. With this, we would love to see one of the projects on the tables is the Commons, which is going to be built right here. right next door. And we thought, why, we need to bring them in there. They could also use the parking garage. It's right next door. See what I mean? The parking garage could be a catalyst for their project, for both the hotels, for new restaurants downtown, without them having to provide parking on their own and trying to figure out, where do I put the parking? How do I mitigate it? So this is that area. That's what's there on those blocks right now. So most of that land, I think there's like 8 property owners, most of it is vacant. You know, they're empty lots. And so that is the idea, was to put it in that area over there. That's why we picked that area. Normally, this would be an executive session discussion, but it's, you know, that's what the hand we're dealt. There is one little home that's occupied. I love this little house so much. I keep going, where could we move it? You know, so, and once again, you know, these are just what you have to deal with, but that's kind of the back side of that. And so we did look at these properties, we walked them and everything, and so I want this homeowner to know nobody's taken out their house, you know, but these are just the hand we're dealt with, and it does make sense that would be the primary location. So that brown box there, you see the yellow square is your primary core retail district, and that brown box is like 3-block walk down to 10th. So it just makes sense it would go there. We did look at the site across Kimball where the parking lot is, but that gets all these people going across the railroad tracks, which we didn't want. We wanted to keep it on this side of the tracks, and we didn't want to put it in the Garden District, a big monolith. And so, and remember, the Garden District is on that side of the track, so we thought it should be on this side of the track. We didn't want to take out grocery stores or any other. We tried to do, where could you put a parking structure to have the least impact? And that's why we came up with that. Once again, none of this is set in stone. We have not approached those properties, you know, and I'm sure they've heard about it now. Because I got a call from one of them and said, oh, I got this thing that says that you want to buy my property. And I just go, no, this is just a vision. So, any questions about parking? There is a way to finance it, and we do believe it should be financed like other infrastructure projects. It will be self-supporting as far as maintenance goes. We do believe the private sector can help pay for it. We've got hotels to help pay for it. We've got, maybe the Commons would chip in, other restaurant stuff. I'm going to show you in this Plaza District that we're putting in here that would rely on that parking structure. So they would pay impact fees or other ways to do that, to help fund the development of the parking structure. So, questions on that? Good? Okay, let's keep cruising. I got to hurry. Boutique Hotel, I'll get right into that. And this says attract regional investment in the downtown core that increases Caldwell's appeal as a tourism destination. Comprehensive plan. All this stuff is in the comprehensive plan. And so go all in and diversify the economy. We want you to get into tourism. Just so you know, in Idaho, tourism is the state's second largest industry. It's an $11 billion industry, $5.8 billion in revenues, tax revenues to the state and to cities. 53,000 jobs. I mean, I keep going down through this. There's the state tax rate, $438 million, and $5.8 billion. I'm sorry, that's in revenue. That's in tourism spending. So nearly $6 billion a year. State and local taxes, about $649 per household. Caldwell should have been in the tourism game years ago. I mean, it's a shame that people come to the call. We stayed for all 5 nights of the rodeo. We were here for all 5 nights. We watched the traffic come in, go to the rodeo, and then get right back on the freeway and leave. That's a shame. You know, and other than the people that are actually competing, that were staying in their rigs or whatever. And so we just believe in Canyon County tourism is $197.3 million in Canyon County. Most of it's in Nampa. You know, local taxes, $1.3 million. This is today. Think of where it could go. $14 million in state taxes. In Canyon County, 2,700 jobs. Overnights in Ada County is 6 times the spending in Canyon County. Your number one problem is you have feasibility for 600 conference quality hotel rooms. Right now, no offense, you have 1 under construction, and other than that, 0 conference quality. You've got the Best Western, you've got the La Quinta, you've got the Budget Inn. You have a few, but they're not conference quality, upscale. So it was really a shame that out of our budget that we spent 20 grand staying in other cities because we couldn't stay in Caldwell. You don't know how many businesses I've talked to in Caldwell. Matter of fact, I was over in Post Falls talking to some people that sell mobile and manufactured homes, Kit Homes. Guess where they're located? Caldwell. I called Kit Homes. When people come here to look at your homes and come tour the factory where they stay, oh, we happen to all stay in Nampa. And you have 40% of the state's wineries. I mean, the top reason for travel is visiting friends and family. So when friends and family visit you, if they're not staying with you, where are they staying? Nampa, Meridian. I mean, they're staying somewhere else. The top activity visitors, once they come, not the reason they come, but the top activity of visitors in the world is shopping, dining, and entertainment in a pedestrian-friendly setting, and that's where 80% of the non-lodging spending takes place. I used to work for Disney. I did work for Disney Institute and taught for Disney Institute. This is why there's a downtown Disney outside each of its parks to get that 80%. So in Caldwell, you have tourism come in. They don't stay, they leave. Now, they will come in during winter, during the winter festival, and I've seen tons of people come here for Indian Creek Plaza from Boise and everything, but when they're done, they get back on the freeway and go back home. Overnight visitors spend 3 times more than day visitors. So it's not about how many people you get, it's how long you get them to stay. So conferences, trade shows, those happen during the week, during October through March. I mean, overnight, there it is, 3 times more than day visitors. So it's not about getting more people. And by the way, this whole tourism deal, other than the Sunny Slope Wine Trail, we don't even send them down to the lake. This is about all your tourist spending staying between Blaine and the freeway. And basically, if we did a whitewater park down to Linden. So we're not trying to overrun the community, the residential areas. So I don't even mention the lake and tourism. We want them to be in this core area. And so there are 6 wine regions in Idaho, 65 wineries. Treasure Valley, you have 26, which is 40%. Eagle region has 6. Boise to Garden City has 18. There's South Central. So you're seeing where all these wineries are. You own it. And yet they're called the Boise area wineries. I mean, it's like, wow. That's Idaho's wine industry. And so in this, the boutique hotel, we would put it right across the creek, right over here on the other side of the creek. Here's the challenge. This would be super upscale. It would be valet parking. So you'd have like 20 spaces around this hotel. It would be like 82 to 100 rooms. You might have some space around there for ADA parking, for luggage drop-off, but other than that, the valet parkers would drive over the parking garage, then run across the pedestrian bridge back to the hotel. I mean, if a guest wanted to do that, park there and walk across the bridge over to the hotel, they could, over the creek. And so, but this is why this parking garage is so critical to even this hotel, which is across the creek from it. So if we do that, we move on to the conference center. So if we go back to this map, you can see where the parking is. You can see where this boutique hotel is up at the top of the picture. And then you can see the conference center right down there. And then you can see we put a restaurant over on Kimball, and I'll show you that in a minute. There's that hotel. Or no, there's your hotels coming in, where you see those little yellow stars popping up on your screen. There's the parking garage, and there is the conference center. And the conference center, the reason we put it over there is the city already owns that. Well, I don't know, maybe the county owns the fire station. I'm not sure who physically owns it, but it's publicly owned. And the nice thing about a conference center is that it is pretty much an empty box, so we could build it there without having a whole bunch of structural engineering really elevating the cost of it. The one I really like, this is in Monterey, California. Their population is 30,000. And this one is about 70,000 square feet. It's very nice. And so we kind of used it as a model for something that you might do in Caldwell. This is in Sequoia. This is the Sequoia Convention Center. Their population is 20,000. They have a convention center. I mean, tomorrow night we're doing a public presentation. We have to use a high school auditorium because there is no space in Caldwell. I mean, when all these people, potato farmers, you name it, when they have groups and stuff come in, there's no meeting space or very little meeting space. And so we think facilities like these, something like this would be fantastic. Here's the other thing you need to understand is the Boise Convention Center turned away over 150 events last year because they don't have capacity. You could bookend it. We're not trying to compete with Boise, but there's no reason why you couldn't do some of those. I mean, you're closer to Eastern Oregon, so you get all of those. But if you look at this, you already have the Sunny Slope Wine Trail, which is phenomenal. You have Indian Creek Plaza, which is a great. You have the Caldwell Night Rodeo, one of the best in the country. You have the Canyon County Fair, Canyon County Event Center, which is a beautiful facility. College of Idaho is right here. We got the Service Center for Eastern Oregon. Why do these people, they don't need to drive past Caldwell for their services. I mean, they're already coming from Ontario to go to D&B and even some of your medical. And so new assets would be called the Caldwell Sports Park. You could host tournaments, statewide tournaments from everywhere. A whitewater park, I'll show you that, Indian Creek Promenade, trade shows, conferences, business travel. I mean, I've keynoted at the Idaho Governor's Conference on Tourism 4 times, and it's strange that they're doing it in Burley, Idaho, in a Holiday Inn where we have to put up portables. They move them around the state. And no offense to Burley, by the way, but they're looking for places to put all these state associations and conferences. There's no reason why Caldwell can't be on that. And then our recommendation, create a lodging advisory committee and a convention and visitors bureau. What you can do is you would create a couple of ways you could fund this. You would create an auditorium district, which Nampa just approved one. And Boise has a big one. The auditorium district is 5% added on to an overnight stay that goes to help facilities like conference centers. So it doesn't cost the locals a dime. Visitors pay the extra 5%. You could also create what they call a TBID, a Tourism Business Improvement District. You could do, right now there's a 2% add-on tax that goes to the state to promote tourism. You could do another 2%. So yes, we'd be paying an extra 7%, but have you ever stayed anywhere and said, before I stay here, I want to know what your sales tax is? By the way, if you go to Las Vegas, it's almost 40%. So the average lodging taxes across the country is 14%. So you adding the auditorium tax, sales tax, and a 2% add-on tax, you're still well within the average. And that funds the operation of your conference center, totally. And it gives you hundreds of thousands of dollars to market Caldwell for tourism. Wouldn't it be great if you had another industry other than agriculture here? I mean, it's the cheapest, fastest, easiest way to diversify your income. The next thing we have on there is the College of Idaho Wine and Culinary Center. And in the comprehensive plan, it says support programs that assist in employment readiness skills, including technical training, licensing, and career counseling in the comprehensive plan. So we thought, why don't we, right across the street from the Boutique Hotel, across the creek, why don't we put a wine and culinary center there? And let the College of Idaho run it. Maybe the city owns it, lease it to the College of Idaho for $1 a year and say, we want your students downtown. We want to have a culinary experience downtown. We want to tie the culinary. You got Amano's, one of the top-rated restaurants in the country. There's no reason why Caldwell can't lift all boats by doing a wine and culinary. We saw this, I love this site. Right on Main, right kind of in downtown, right across from that hotel. So we imagine, can you imagine something like this? How cool would that be? if you had a conference center, a parking structure, and this would be the three big public assets other than the promenade, you would be a fantastic tourism destination. You'd have jobs downtown. You'd have a culinary school. This culinary school would actually have a test restaurant in it where people come in and learn these skills. All fits within downtown and within the comprehensive plan. Next up on the list, I'm sorry I'm going kind of fast, but when you get to the end of the Plaza District, I'll have some questions. You might have questions. The other thing is that, like I said, 70% of your workforce works in professional services, not agriculture. And yet, there's no office buildings. And the comprehensive plan says, promote unique economic development projects that are designed to integrate such uses as office complexes. So this is not in competition with something you already have adopted. And so there you go. 67% of Caldwell's working population are employed in professional, administrative, or white-collar roles. So, this is another person on our team owns this, Bob. Where is he back there? There he is. And we commented, I don't even know if he's seen this yet. And we thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could take this and do that? We were here for a year. We were going to lease it. We were actually going to move our family to Caldwell. We started looking at houses. That's how much we fell in love with this city. And I kept going, where can we put an office? Where can we put an office? And all I could find was strip malls. And I kept going, man, there's got to be offices. I don't want to go to Meridian or Nampa. I want to be in Caldwell. So we designed this, and this is cool. It's got the railroad tracks right behind it. And Bob, it's his namesake building. You see your name on there now? And so, by the way, he didn't even know. He didn't say, I want to put an office building there. As a matter of fact, you know, Bob, Mr. Jenkins back there might not be happy because this takes out his tower. But the point is, they gave us free rein and said, what do you think makes best? And once again, even this would use the parking garage. They'd have some parking because there's parking underneath 10th Street there. People don't know about it, but there's a lot of parking right there. There'd be some street front parking. We put like between 10th Street and there, we have a little garden area out there. But this could be a 4 or 5 story building. You need office space. It would reduce the commute traffic to and from. We tried to find through the Census Bureau how many professional businesses are owned by people in Caldwell, but we couldn't get that information because it always goes by their business address, not where they actually live. But we would imagine there's a lot of engineering, architecture, other firms. There's huge demand for office complexes in Caldwell, and we could not find any multi-story. And by the way, these office complexes have their own mail room in them. They usually have a shared conference room that their tenants use. So it's not, you know, so they're actually built that, and the first floor might have a coffee shop in it or a bistro. So this type of development we need, and you could have multiple tenants in there using these facilities. Okay? Expanded Main Street retail. This was surprising. Caldwell has significantly fewer retail square feet per capita than Nampa next door. That's in your comprehensive plan. As a matter of fact, here you go. Nampa has 10 million square feet. They have 79 square feet of retail per residence. You have 31 square feet per residence. You have the highest leakage of any city over 30,000 in Idaho. Obviously, Emmett's, you know, going to have a lot of leakage because, you know, they come to Eagle or wherever. And so that's, you have a huge demand. Right now, your downtown shopping district is what you see outlined in pink on your square. You see the little yellow dots. Those are your street fronts where you have most of your, now I'm not talking about the retail along Cleveland and along Blaine. You know, there's Albertsons and all of those. So I'm just talking about in your core shopping district. We would like to see that grow from this to that. You have the demand for retail. You have so much, think about the sales tax revenues. You've got a great little shopping district around the plaza, but I could shop in all those shops in hardly any time at all. It needs to be, remember the plan we did 10 years ago was a 3-year plan. It wasn't the long-term plan. That was the starter kit. And this is about growing past the starter kit. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if down the road, we don't know if the post office will be there forever. That's what's on the near side on the left. We thought, could this Main Street go from this over years to this? and then come in the other way, where the Extension Institute is, where the wine place is, where the Wine Culinary Center would be. But we thought, wow, over time we could do this. Once again, we're not going to take anybody's property away, but over time, these are things how you get things redeveloped. These could have upper story residential, and the developers of this, once again, parking garage. They would help build the parking garage. They would have some on-street parking there, probably parallel parking along Main. Yeah, I mean, you know how tight it is with the angle-in parking in front of Indian Creek Steakhouse. But you could do something like this. So we kept thinking, wow, we need more retail. You know, walkable streets, parks, and plazas intermingled with boutiques, restaurants, and activities will provide a unique experience for visitors, residents alike. Comprehensive plan. And so next up on this, we thought, could we do, this is one of the bolder ones. There's 9th Street. You can see what we did in this case. Could we vacate one block of 9th Street between Arthur and Blaine, vacate that street, then sell the street on both sides to restaurants to help pay for removing that over the creek, and it would maybe even help give us some funding to help Keystone move off the creek, from over the creek, Keystone Pizza. And so this, how that, you can see in this drawing right there, it shows 9th Street, now take away. So this would be a true dining district. You are way behind on dining per capita and per restaurants. You've got great, but there's people in Caldwell that go to, is it 5th in Boise? What's the pedestrian street, 7th? 8th, I can never remember. 8th Street, they go there. And so this creates, the plaza goes right here. We're opening up the creek here, and we're putting all kinds of restaurants in this area, really creating a great, you can see all those little stars coming up. Those are all new restaurant locations with a couple existing locations like Amano and you know, we've got Grit over there. I've included them and the coffee house. All those. So you get in with this whole thing, all pedestrian oriented, a great dining district. Once again, parking structure. The developers of these would help pay for the parking structure. So we can make this all about pedestrians. I've always said that downtowns need to be about people, not cars. The core downtown area. Yes, we do need to accommodate people that need handicap. And here you see the circles where I said take the lids off of, and it's under construction right now. Thank you very much for doing it. I think it's awesome. It's going to be great. And so you can see this 9th, I call it the 9th Avenue Dining District. That wouldn't have to be an official name. But here it is, me kind of zooming in on it, how that could all develop. Just be really cool. It just made downtown. I mean, this is a concept looking towards where Keystone Pizza might be, you know, just all on the creek. And then comprehensive plan, support development that provides a range of experiences, integration with Indian Creek. And so we thought maybe urban renewal could do a feasibility study for the Plaza District for these development projects. And urban renewal would take those pieces of 9th Street, they could be sold, and maybe we need to combine some, but I thought that would be a good urban renewal project. So we suggested some time ago that they do a feasibility study for this, but we did not want to include all the hotels. We want those big projects to give the city tax base now, not down the road. And so, something like that. And this is where the TIF district is currently. The one in red is the Garden District one, and it includes that active adult living, and it includes the boutique hotel across the creek. But then we thought in yellow could be kind of the Plaza District, TIF district, but I would not include like some of the hotels and stuff in there because we want to get the city some tax base, you know, and have them help pay for the parking garage and those. So we think overall, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that just be awesome? Walking downtown and going, and this is, you see Keystone Pizza on the left there, you know, but 9th Street would be just about beyond where that little pedestrian bridge is. Coolest thing ever. I mean, it would just really fill out your downtown. And then we also have in there to create a zoning overlay for the Plaza District, just as Plaza District, with no change of franchises. We want to keep it organic to Caldwell. The last thing we want is another, what was the sandwich shop on the plaza, you know, that went away, or a Dairy Queen or a Subway. We want to keep it organic to Caldwell. That's why I like about Flying M, it's organic to Caldwell. And so in this district, we are suggesting a zoning overlay in this district because we got other places for chains and franchises. I'll show you that in a minute. And then across 10th would be a flagship hotel. And this is where the big motel sign is there. This was a hotel or a motel at one point. We thought, could we do a flagship hotel? A flagship hotel means it includes a restaurant. It includes some conference space. And this would still be within a 2-block walk of your conference center. And this one might be 140 to 160 rooms. There is room for it there. And you can see here, the hotel's on one side. We took parking out on the other side where Arthur is. So over time, Arthur would become pretty much pedestrian over time. It's still not in front of the theater, still be vehicles there. But this is showing where that could go, where that property could go, and would front right on the creek. And so this could be that would be 3 hotels in your downtown with almost 400 hotel rooms, and that's what you need to have a conference center, 400 hotel rooms. That gives your hotel rooms. Your overflow would be the one by the fairgrounds, the one they're going to build across the freeway. And we'd create transit ways to bring them into downtown. And so, I'm just not going to get through this, am I? And so I just want to show you where this actually goes. You can kind of see the pink line is Indian Creek Promenade, but you see where all the pedestrians, how they would go through this dining district and under 10th to get over to the hotel on that side. There's several routes to do that. So there's kind of a close-up of that idea and where it could be. And if you see where that big arrow is in the parking lot, if you're standing there, this might be what you would see. Indian Creek Promenade is right in front. That's why that sidewalk there is so wide. I mean, how cool would that be? It'd just be awesome. When it comes to Kimball Avenue, right behind the stage, that is already out to RFP. I've already talked to several developers. For some reason, they keep calling me. I met with one for lunch last week. And so, you know, and I keep trying to sell them. But this is where Indian Creek is, and you can see where on Kimball there, you know, behind the stage, a restaurant there. And that is this lot right there. And once again, I think there's 3 lots there, if I'm right, and 2 of them are urban renewal. And we thought, take all 3 of them, don't do parking, and turn that into that. I showed that to a developer last week. He says, we want to build that. Rooftop gardens and everything. And I said, where do we do the parking? I said, you'd help pay for the parking garage. See, so once the parking garage becomes a reality, I think it's almost unfortunate where these things are out to RFP before we've even solved the parking issue. So you may want to scale back and say, let's figure out what these people are going to do for parking, and then we can get them that through impact fees or through a public-private partnership, some way to do that. The other thing we have in here is facade easements. This one, we've worked in many cities where the city gets a facade easement. So for instance, the people that own this property, this is where Destination Caldwell is upstairs. They have no desire, no intent, no incentive to fix this. It's the same thing behind the wedding, the dress shop. The backside of it looks awful. You don't even feel safe walking back there. But in these cases, the property owners have no interest, and both of them been talked to. And so we've worked in the city and said, tell you what, give the city an easement just for the facade. Then we can put public money into it to make it at least look better. And we've done that in many, many cities. There's even facade easement grants out there. And so that's one way you could solve this problem without, I don't know what other remedy there really is. You can't make them do it unless it's a blight or you find some ordinance. But our deal is not to force the hand. It's like, you know what, why don't you just give it an easement so we can make it look better? So that's an idea. It's both there, so we thought do a facade easement program for that. You know, this is the other one, this going down here, but you know, this is, I mean, our promenade walks right through here. You know, and we gotta make this look better. So that's in there. Then, one other one on the Plaza District is if once you have a parking garage, we have 7th Avenue. It's a dead end. And right now, there's like 23 parking spaces, so we gotta solve the parking. See what I mean? The parking's this. But this, we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could take 7th Street, put bollards at Main Street, and so delivery vehicles, emergency vehicles would always be able to get down there, but our parking would be right across the creek from it. And so in this case, we thought, what could we do there to make it more pedestrian? When you have the ice rink up, Indian Creek Plaza is pretty much off limits. You can't do anything else because the ice rink takes up 3/4 of the plaza. So we thought if we could do bollards, we've done bollards in many cities. Some of these automatically drop down by remote. Some of them, like 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, they actually have a bolt through there and locks through there. So delivery vehicles are usually allowed to go down in there till like 11 in the morning, and then the bollards go up, and so UPS, all those guys go down there. And then after that time is only when emergency vehicles would have access. And so, attract regional investment in the downtown core that increases Caldwell appeal as a tourism destination. We've got Tillian on one side. We've got, the shops on this side of 7th. Wouldn't it be cool if this turned into that? Now, I'm showing it with a farmer's market there, but wouldn't that be awesome? All those little shops that just opened in the base of Tillian, rather than have cars out there, you had tables and chairs and dining. And if I owned one of those condos, I would love to look at this versus looking at a parking lot in a dead-end street. And then if you go down to the dead-end street and you turn right on Arthur, this is what you see. And I thought, wow. I worked in Sandusky, Ohio, and we did a cool thing in their waterfront. We put these swings out over the waterfront. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if you did that on Arthur? Those swings would go just right out by the creek. And these are adult swings. Kids could go on them too, of course. But what you would do is you'd make this all about people, not cars. But you can't do it unless you have parking solved. Can't do it. I would never go there. You can't lose any parking. And so in the end, this would be pretty much what you would get in there is $240 million worth of new development in just the Plaza District, those few blocks. $240 million. You can have that in 5 years if you have a parking garage. $240 million. That's 10 times the cost of building the parking garage in new tax base. 10 times. I mean, the tax base just in those blocks would be the same as building another, 558 houses. What would you rather have? I'd rather have it here. Rather than take up more farmland or wherever else all these houses are going to be built. That's the tax base. Wow. That's based on your average, $430,000. That's how much you get in just those few blocks. So with that, we wanted to make downtown a pedestrian focus. So everything you see in yellow would be pedestrian only. Parking garage is right there. And there would be, and you can see there's still parking on Main. And you can see where the little star is. That's 6th Street, where it kind of deads into where the commons would go. We'd like to get rid of that and have the commons be in the parking garage. Make that more public open space. And then if you go across 10th, that could all be, or no, this is across, where are we at here? Oh yeah, across Kimball. Kimball would still be vehicle. And across there, so you could basically have from 10th all the way with Kimball, Main, still have vehicles and on-street parking. That's where you're handicapping the people that need to be really close, and the parking garage would do that. And so, in the end, we also had some things for Destination Caldwell. We want them to do more activities than events, and I'm going to skip over it so that I stay on time. And I'm going to share that with them, but we have a couple of recommendations for them. But Plaza District, and then I'll go into Stockyard District, and then I've just got to Stockyard District and Transportation. Any questions about the Plaza District right off? You want me to keep cruising along? Good? Okay. Stockyard District. Now we're moving down to 21st. That area, Gateway streetscape, I kind of showed that earlier. In the gateways, here's where we come off at 84. We'd love to see a center median for part of that, with left turn lanes onto Commercial and Franklin, right turns onto Franklin. Some nice gateways up there would be awesome. More farm oriented, we'd love to see, once again, we'd love to see street trees all the way down there over time. And sidewalks on both sides. We've seen people walk down there, and some of that is already in place. So along with streetscape improvements, you could add pole banners, street print, crosswalks, other things to identify the Stockyard District. And then when it comes to retail, this is where you could have chains and franchises. Many people said, we'd like to see some more of that stuff on this side of 84. It all seems to be going over in what, Sky Ranch area. Can you bring some of it over here? And yeah, sure, why not? So this is kind of an overview of what could go where. And once again, these are just ideas. They're just ideas. And we're not taking anybody's property. But you can see in this where that hotel is under construction. And you can see that across the street, we put a restaurant there. We have restaurants all around there. Right now, other than fast food, I think there's one on Chicago that's kind of in an industrial building. Can't remember the name of it right off. But you really don't have many sit-down restaurants, and yet this is a huge event center. We want them downtown because it's homegrown and organic. But if somebody says, you know what, if somebody's staying in that hotel, you know, where do they eat? Do they leave town, or will they find downtown? Will they come downtown? So those are those kind of things. So here I said, you know, we got this big U-Haul storage place. You know, I'm not sure if this would fit back there. And I drove it last night, and I don't think so. But we even said, man, could you see a Tractor Supply back there? We don't know. These are just ideas of how we could add more commercial development along this corridor. Tax base. Everything's about tax base. Here's another site. We said, wow, you know what we could do behind there? This is where we put that Trader Joe's, back behind there. We're not taking this business away. Nobody's going to make them sell it. But that property owner say, man, if Trader Joe's wants to buy that property there and buy me out, why not? I mean, it's totally up to the property owner. We're not dictating. We're not taking anybody's property. We're showing them highest and best use. The reason we put a Trader Joe's there is because they do a lot of snacks, they do a lot of healthy foods and drinks and everything, and having them right on the promenade would give them extra business. That's why we did that. This site up near 84, we thought, wow, could we do another, where could we put a Costco in Caldwell? Talk about retail sales. But there's a lot of Costco's around, but guess what? There's only one Sam's Club in Idaho, and it's in Idaho Falls. Only one in the entire state. Wouldn't it be great if you had a Sam's Club here? You know how much retail sales that would be? Wow, so maybe instead of Costco. And of course I had to put an In-N-Out burger there because it's my favorite. So, but you know, whatever. And then we'd have gas there. So these are just ideas for commercial development. And once again, it has high I-84 visibility. Here's the U-Haul place right here, and I was criticized, you put a building on the U-Haul place. Well, nobody's going to take them away. But wouldn't that be a cool place for a restaurant? Wouldn't it have to be Olive Garden? And it's totally up to them. They say, well, down the road, my U-Haul place could be pretty much anywhere. Maybe I'd make more money by selling this for a restaurant. It's totally up to them. Nobody's going to make them do it. You know, Aaron that sits on our team, he's part of our team, and you know, I said, Aaron, guess what I did is I took out your business and put a Texas Roadhouse there, you know. And you know, and that's an idea he even thought about. I mean, maybe not that brand, but he even thought, oh, that'd be pretty cool to have a restaurant there. But these are all really close. So we just thought if there was ever a place where you could do sit-down dining, that'd be probably more chain-oriented, so it's not competing with downtown. It's an entirely different experience. Maybe it's along 21st. And so those are just ideas. They're concepts. But how we make that more, not just an industrial zone, but really a mixed use. And there are apartments and other things in that area, so we're giving them restaurants without having to just hop on 84 and go to Nampa. The fairgrounds area. There was a plan done for the fairgrounds, but we thought it really rearranged the 3 ball fields, and we thought, let's take another stab at it. This time we sat down with the rodeo, the college, and the fair without the county and without the city there, the users. We sat down with the users of it and said, let's do a plan. And I won't go into great detail because we're running out of time, but on this, there's kind of the initial plan we did with them. And in this case, you could see that we have the covered barn. We actually moved some things down and made it a little more cohesive. Number one, the initial plan we did has more than 1,000 parking spaces. So we solved the parking issue there. It moves the Canyon County Fairgrounds more together. We create a little bridge over across the creek, that's the canal over there, not the creek, across the canal over. You can see where there's picnic benches and everything over into so that Canyon County there. Here was our recommendation. We think the city should get out of the fairgrounds business. Period. Here's why. Number one, it makes it difficult. We would love to see 150 days or more of activities there without people having to go to the city to get permission, to the county to get permission, having 2 organizations doing this. And then, I mean, in our thinking, one person at the city told me that O'Connor Fieldhouse needs about $2 million. The football stadium, D&B, is it? No, it's D&B Arena, no, not the arena, Simplot Stadium. Needs several $1 million. The steel structures, they want to move, they want to put more bench there, they need locker rooms there, millions of dollars. And so why, if the city needed to spend $5 or $10 million in this fairgrounds over the next 10 years, I could think of an incredible list of other things that would be a higher priority and a faster return on investment. My initial thing, and remember, these are just concepts, I would give the football stadium to the College of Iowa and say, it's yours. You go find the money to go redo all the ironwork that needs to be done, build your locker rooms, everything you need, give it to the college. I mean, maybe the arena actually buys O'Connor Fieldhouse and that whole end. You know, and then maybe, you know, and then the rest of the county, everything in blue there. I would give the county that parking lot and let the county run all the parking. Or maybe you sell them the parking lot and help put the parking in downtown and run shuttles from here. I mean, this is just ideas. But I just thought, why is the city in the fairgrounds business when you have such a huge list of priorities? And these priorities actually have more needs than what the property is worth. I mean, if the property's worth $1 million, but need $2 million worth of repairs. So we didn't do any in-depth on this. We just thought, why is the county in this? Why is the city in this? To us, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I just thought if the city could work on other things, I could make a huge list. And the fairgrounds would not be really probably even in the top 10, even though we want the fair, we want the rodeo, we want all of those things. We actually developed this plan, actually, where you see the yellow is a fence. So they could actually fence off the entire fairgrounds, so they could have events going from one side to the other without having to go through gates and checking wristbands and doing all of that. They could fence off the gate that comes across the creek. Or across the canal. So those are kind of the ideas we did for the fairgrounds. Let me do the Whitewater Park. I'll do this one pretty quick because I'm out of time. And as a matter of fact, maybe I won't even go into it, but we went up on the Boise River and looked at that, and we thought, could we do something really cool up there with the Whitewater Park? This, by the way, we donated this. This was not in any of our scope of work. Robert here came up to me one day, goes, I want to design the Whitewater Park. He said, we're not going to get paid for it. He goes, I want to design. He spent a month designing this. It is so cool. It would be the nicest, best Whitewater Park in the western United States. I mean, it is so cool. And the comprehensive plan says, residents seeing an extensive trail network connecting parks, Boise River, surrounding farmland, on and on. I showed that earlier, but I'm showing it again. But up at the top, we have a marina up there. And it could look something like what you see right here. Awesome. There's some areas up there that are kind of wetland oriented. You can see where I've got the yellow box there. Wouldn't it be cool if you did a trail, a whole wetland restoration system there with boardwalk trails and everything all the way through this? You know, when we go to move down a little further over here, you can see right here, we've got even a helipad if you need emergency landing. And you can see on the right, notice there's a zip line going across there. This is one where you have private sector, public sector, state parks. You might even make it a national recreation. We didn't see the city doing the Whitewater Park all by itself. This could be a huge development for the entire state of Idaho. Could be amazing. So it's got zip lines, a lot of private sector. Here we've got a pump track up there. If you're not familiar with pump tracks, this is pretty much what they look like for BMX, and bikes, and skateboards, all kinds of activities up there. This would have an advanced course, a beginner course, all through this whole Whitewater Park going through here on the Boise River. It would just be, I mean, we had so much fun with this. It could be one of the biggest attractions in the state of Idaho, and you would own it here in Caldwell. And you've got, what is it, Curtis Park up there? It's right there, right where you put the marina. You already got a park up there. It's not utilized or anything. And so you can see this area right here. We've got lots of staging areas for all kinds of events. There's a vehicle bridge, there's pedestrian bridges, and so, you know, this is just me quickly going through this. Showing you some of the renderings we did of how cool a Whitewater Park could be on the Boise River and creating a trail system that goes, you can walk or bike there all the way from downtown. You can actually walk or bike there along the Eden Creek Promenade and the trail that would go up there all the way from the fairgrounds without ever getting in a car if you wanted. Be about a 4-mile hike, I think, doing that, or a bike ride. But I just wanted to show you really quickly that. We'd have a main lodge and offices there. I think you'd have concessionaires there. You would charge fees for people to use the Whitewater Park because you'd have people, safety people there and everything. But it could be an amazing, amazing destination. And, you know, even this is now further south in there. We have another small adventure park there. And this is right by the RV park that's right there on the river. This is just north of that. So the RV park's there. A lot of this stuff, it's just made for this. But once again, we said put together a Whitewater Park team made up of trail enthusiasts, Whitewater Park people. I showed a little glimpse of this at a chamber meeting in January, and most of it came and said, we want the Whitewater Park. It was clearly everybody's favorite. And so I'll go past this because I want to do the last one, then I'll have some questions for you. Finally, how do you connect it all? And this is where we wanted to create an event shuttle that would run from all these locations you see on there. And we thought, let's start with you know those really cool trolleys? I'll show you some pictures in a minute. You can buy them for like $30,000, $35,000. They run off of natural gas. They have some that are electric, but the electric doesn't work when it gets below freezing. But we thought if we could do event shuttles to and from the sports park when it's developed, College of Idaho. And the thing is with shuttles, they have to run no longer than 20 minutes. If they have to wait more than 20 minutes, I'll just drive. That's the general consensus across the country. So we need shuttles that run every 15 minutes during the rodeo. And we were here for the rodeo, and we saw all the volunteers. A lot of you were out there with golf carts and everything, and it was kind of a fun experience. But this would be to actually organize it and have it be kind of official. The historic depot downtown would be back to being a depot and a museum. Why not use it? So you see here where we'd have these event shuttles would drop people off right at the depot. Why not use it as a depot? It's already there. It's a great building. It's historic. And it's half a block away from the plaza and Main Street and everything else. And so back to the comprehensive plan, it's growing. Getting around can sometimes be challenging. Traffic on major roads, parking downtown, safe multimodal travel networks are highly desired by the community. It's in the comprehensive plan. So here I kind of just straightened it out so it'd be more left and right. But you can see how they would run down, you know, we have Blaine and Cleveland are one-way streets. But you can see how this would all work. And it says develop a connected transportation system. And Support upgrades to transit stop infrastructure. We did these in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we love them. Because they're not utilitarian bus stops. I hate those. I think they're ugly. But these are kind of cool. It's a trolley stop. And so if we had these in like 7 locations, because even during the night rodeo, we didn't know where to catch. We just would hail somebody with a golf cart and hope they would take us back to where our vehicle was parked. But doing these kinds of things would be so cool and add to the experience. And people would know where they catch the shuttle and would have that little map. And these shuttles would run and we even thought, wouldn't this be cool if you could actually make it part of the experience of coming to Caldwell and having a great time? How awesome would that be? You know, and these trolleys, you can find them. There are people that restore these, and then they sell them. And most of them are now natural gas. But having 2 or 3 of these and using school bus drivers, or we did talk to Transit Authority, we talked to Metro Community Service. They also said we'd be happy to come in and work with Caldwell on developing event shuttles. So this is during major events right now. And so, you know, there it is, kind of a close-up of, we actually added a few more parking spaces there where shuttles would come in and turn around to head back out. And so connecting all these transit stops and everything are part of that. So I'll do the bottom line and then we'll still have a few minutes. One thing about the comprehensive plan, it says the comprehensive plan is a living, evolving document that is adapted to reflect refinements in city council priorities, new ideas, and emerging trends. That's what this plan does. It does not conflict with your comprehensive plan in any way, shape, or form. And it says, even though this plan covers a range of topics, it does not provide specific level of detail for all topics or all geographic areas within the city. This is a companion to the comprehensive plan. And we urge the city to adopt it. When it comes to public sector projects, let's talk about that. Garden District improvements already approved, Indian Creek Promenade, public parking structure, event shuttles and stops, 9th Street Dining District doing that little thing, smaller downtown improvements like on Main, a Caldwell Sports Complex, wine and culinary. These are the 10 public sector, or where public sector do. But these public sector projects will drive between $600 and $800 million of brand new tax base to Caldwell in just 1,700 acres. And you could probably do it in 10 years if you wanted. So if the growth was in this area, not residential, it's commercial growth. Notice we didn't have any other than the active adult living. We had no residential in there. It's commercial growth. That's sales tax revenues. It's property tax revenues. It's getting people spending here to reduce leakage. It's all of those things. Private sector projects, I mean, this is the list, you know, $600, $900 million in new property taxes. Generate more than $3 million a year in property taxes alone just to the city of Caldwell. That's just the city's portion. Nearly 10 times the current retail spending that you have now. 800% increase in tourism spending. I mean, nearly $1 million a year in lodging and auditorium taxes alone. Thousands of new jobs. I mean, residential, commercial, industrial properties, what today is 68% residential, 32% commercial, which, by the way, that's very, very good for bedroom community. Bedroom communities are usually like 90% residential, 10%, and you've been turning into a bedroom community. And that's what we're trying to avoid. And so right now you're at 68. When you do this, just in this 17 acres, it will drop down to 55% residential and 45% commercial. Now, that's kind of estimating your residential at the past growth, what you've had. But this helps balance the table so that commercial is paying more of the load. Be incredible. And that was it in a nutshell. And so what you have is phenomenal. It is an incredible city. We love it. We really seriously looked at living here. And so I just, and this is just 1,700 acres, what you could do. Questions? We got 7 minutes.
Well, thank you for that presentation. There's a lot to
That's a,
chew through, but we got through it. Council,
comments, questions?
Councilor Denver.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Roger, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. 4 hours of a lot of information jam-packed in here. And so ideally, we probably need another 4 hours or maybe even another 8 hours to.
Right, you can spend all days on just parking, you know?
So one of the questions that I have, and maybe it's more of a comment than a question, but you can surely answer it. With regards to this sort of development, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure work that needs to be done.
Yes.
And so with regards to the infrastructure that needs to be done, and I'm just thinking right off the top of my head, the Garden District, some very, some remarkable plans, but all your aerial shots did show the dried up area over there. So when this is developed, you're anticipating that those people in the private-public partnership would be bearing most of the cost for the infrastructure that needs to be
In the Garden District or throughout the whole thing?
throughout the whole project. I was just thinking
Yeah,
of the Garden District.
you know what, I think, when I was here 10 years ago, Caldwell was like, we have to give away the farm in order to get anybody to come here. Caldwell, you know, used to have a pretty rough reputation. There's no, I mean, y'all know it. It doesn't have that anymore. But I don't believe you have to give away a farm to attract these people. You have almost 80,000 people live here, and you could become the hub for all Eastern Oregon. People even from as far as Baker City would probably come shop. They do come into the, I mean, you don't know how often I see Oregon plates in Meridian and Nampa over there, you know. And there's just no reason why you can't get that in Caldwell. I don't think you have to give away the farm to do that. That's why I think the private sector will help pay for the garage. I really believe that. And if you wanted if let's say Sam's Club said, I want to go build where I showed that Costco. I don't think they say, what do we have to give you? I wouldn't do that. I'd say, you know what, you have excellent I-84. All these things were built on highest and best use of what would go, where you could get the maximum return on their investment. I don't think you have to give away the farm anymore to get these public infrastructure. I think that these people through impact fees and other things, they're going to come to Caldwell because it's a place to be. And I hope that answered your question, but I think that's really important. It's nice to have incentives for hotels and tourism because you're just getting into it. But on the other hand, by not requiring restaurants and all these people that require, you know, we're in the day of Etsy shops downtown, 500 square foot donut shops. How are you going to make a 500 square foot donut shop go out and find one parking space to fit ordinances? You don't. That's why you have shared parking. And that's why you have impact fees and public-private partnerships. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Dittenberg. Anyone else? Of course, if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out and we'll submit them to Roger.
We are doing a public presentation tomorrow night at the high school. It's gonna be a 2-hour one. So I'm not gonna go into all this detail and everything. We're just gonna kind of show the highlights of it. I'll get you the slides. These slides, there'll be like 4 per page. Does that make sense? So that you don't have that many. So I'll get you that so you'll have these slides. Some of these images we just did in the last couple of weeks, so they're not in the plan. And just remember the plan you have, that they don't, you know, I didn't put them in the same order. But that plan is extremely detailed. There may be some things you want to edit in it. The Chamber of Commerce physically owns it. But I have given the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce also has the actual CAD files. The city provided all the base maps for that. And so you will have, the Chamber will have all of the planning files and also has, that was all laid out in Adobe InDesign. So if you need to make adjustments to it, it's like the comprehensive plan. I hope you don't get it. I hope you adopt it like it is, and then you take project by project and say, well, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this. I hope you'll adopt it and adopt the districts. Those are two things to adopt, and then say, okay, let's create teams for each of these when you're ready and when there's funding and all those other things. I mean, it's up to you. This does not, adopting this plan does not commit the one dime, and I would adopt it as a companion to the comprehensive plan. Because we followed the comprehensive plan, it was our Bible for every single thing in there. And that's what I got for you. Thank you very much. I know you guys are super busy, council and mayor, I know, and thank you very much for setting up this special session.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Roger, for all your hard work, and thank you, of course, to our staff that have helped facilitate that. Thank you, council, for a early morning meeting. I know it wasn't as early as Nampa's, but we'll see what we can do to keep up. With that, for those interested in the event tomorrow night, Chamber of Commerce, correct? It's on your Facebook. You can go to your Facebook or the website and get the information. If you'd like to attend, it's open to the public. Keep in mind they have a lot of seating, a lot more than we do, but I can't remember what it maxed out at, but several hundred people, they can afford to fit in there. Just be advised.
And it'll be an open house at 5 to 6 and the presentation from 6 to 8.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So those from the public that would like to attend, especially after working hours, please feel free to attend over at Caldwell High School, 3401 South Indiana. And with that, we're going to call it a wrap tonight. We do have a 5 p.m. Caldwell Police Department pinning and promotion ceremony. And then we'll have a regular council meeting that'll start at 6 p.m. So thank you for all in attendance today. With that, that's a wrap.